Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. Has appropriate meeting notification been made?
Yes, Your Honor, it has.
How would you call roll, please?
Alderman Altman Cloth. Here. Alderman Ellis.
Here.
Alderman Spiegelberg. Here. Alderman Mulder. Here. Alderman Shellpepper.
Here.
Alderman Maroney.
Here.
Alderman Douglas.
Here.
Alderman Rozak.
Here.
Great, we're going to move on to some committee business. We have 4 different items tonight. We're going to start off with a pickleball update and an expansion request. Then we're going to move on to Wingspan development discussion, on to street condition updates and status, and then finally come to a review of our Class B liquor license, which is one of the things you've requested. So if our friends from the Lake Country Pickleball Club, if you'd come up, please introduce yourselves. The podium is yours. They made a request to me a few weeks ago of potentially expanding from 10 to 20 courts sooner than they had planned. So initially we thought it'd be maybe 2025. And I said, well, why don't you come, give us an update of what's happening, and then council, you have the opportunity to share any ideas or thoughts. And this is an open discussion, and there's no action. What we're looking for from the city staff and from the mayor's office is direction from the council. If you could please go ahead and identify yourself, and we'll get started.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd first like to introduce myself. I'm Chris Olson with the Lake Country Pickleball Club. I serve on the board, and we have Paul Barber with us and Judy Berghofer with us today, 3 board members. Bob, you say, or Mayor, you say that we're requesting help, assistance a little earlier than initially thought. We didn't know we'd need any additional courts or that they would be desired. A couple years ago, when we first came to you seeking approval for the construction of these 10 courts, we only had 126 members. Today, we have over 1,000 members 2 years later. So that facility right there that you can see opened up just about a year ago. And we already are over full. So I want to thank the mayor, Mark, I want to thank you, I want to thank the council, because without you guys, you people, this would not have been built. So thank you for approving it, and thank you for helping to design it. Craig had a big role there. And that is, I don't know how many of you play pickleball or have played there, but this is the premier facility in Wisconsin. This is the Mecca. And I think that's one reason it's so popular. Another reason is that we do a lot for the community, and I'm going to let Paul Barber talk about that. But with over 1,000 members, we have times when there's 40 people waiting on those 10 courts. And we have about, I mentioned we have over 1,000 members, but we only have, about 25% of those members are city residents. That's during our group time. So the club has, if you remember, we have 50% of the hours there. We have hours that are early morning through late afternoon. The balance of the hours, 50%, are community times, so public, open. That's evening and weekends. And we think that those times are also quite full. We do not keep any record of that. So we have many more than 225, 250 residents playing on those pickleball courts. So what we're looking for from the council is we're looking for we'd like to work with you like we did 2 years ago to build 10 more courts on that property. And I think we have, I don't know, Paul, do we have a slide showing those 10 additional courts? So they would be constructed directly south of those courts. The wall to your left would actually be a common wall between the existing courts and the new courts. And you might recall that we raised $500,000 of private money for that facility. And of course, the city was gracious enough to give us the land, just under 1 acre. So what we're requesting now is another close to 1 acre, about 35,000 square feet. And we would also like to split the costs with the city. So in other words, we would put in $200,000 through our fees, and then the city might put in 200,000 of the balance. So we currently charge $70 per member. So this year we received $70,000. Now the city, Craig, negotiated a great deal. 20 of those dollars go right to the city for maintenance. So the city has $20,000 right now for maintenance, and really there's very little maintenance required at present on those. And that's a 10-year contract. So our thought is if you can somehow offer us $200,000, we would pay you $50,000, or we would use our $50,000 annual income and pay the balance with that money. And then, of course, after 10 years, those courts are yours. I mean, we'd like to continue using those courts and maybe negotiate a contract for the future. But if you so desire, after 10 years, those courts, they're yours. The club has no rights. And we've paid, if that happens, if you give us 200 and we pay 200 and we've already paid $500,000, that would mean for $200,000 you have $1 million facility or a $900,000 facility free and clear that you own and operate. So, any questions from me on that? I'm gonna turn this over to Paul, who's gonna tell you how we partner with the city and what we do as far as the schools, the community, the senior centers. Any questions for me on the figures?
Anything in writing?
As an option, no. Today is they want to present their ideas.
No, I mean, like the ideas that are being presented, we have something in writing right now, so I don't have to take
No.
notes on
No.
this detailed plan and proposition that's being presented.
Correct. There's no action item today. So today, they're going to present what they want to do.
Okay.
And if you guys say, hey, we're interested, they can put a formal proposal together for us. But we didn't want to go down the full long process unless we felt the council was willing to contribute money.
But just I'm saying like rudimentary notes of what's being proposed, not a contract. I mean, it'd be nice to get the outlines of
Yeah.
what's even being,
We did not,
yeah.
we can make things available or do a follow-up. We did not request anything from the city.
I'd also like just to add that Heartland has added courts, Pewaukee has added courts, Waukesha. Brookfield has a proposal that went over budget, so that right now is at a standstill. But this is, I think we acted a little early, as the city acted a little early, and we have our courts built, and they're built right. Where these other communities, they didn't do the job that was done here. So, okay.
Alderman, just 1 second. Alderman Altman-Cloth, you had your hand up?
I do have a question. I think it's probably going to be a little bit more directed towards Eric, but just real quick, going off of what Chaz said, I mean, because we do have the time allotted today for this discussion, it would have been nice if we would have had a little bit more information so that we knew what questions to come with. I mean, all these questions for me are just kind of popping up the more he speaks, and sometimes it is nice to be a little bit more prepared with information. And I apologize, I know, Eric, this is your first meeting, Craig just retired. And if you don't have this answer, we'll forgive you, but we expect an email by tomorrow morning with the answer. So you had mentioned, during your 50% of your time, it's full. Obviously, you don't know what the other 50 is.
Well, we do, because we do Alderman play some of that time. I mean, I
The
go as
50%,
just
you mean the 50% that it's like the non-member time?
Sure,
You're there?
I'll play there
Okay,
sometime.
well, because you had mentioned you don't know how much it's being used during the non-member time.
Well, we don't have statistics on that.
Okay. Do you know from the Park and Rec standpoint, like how, I mean, is it pretty busy? Is it pretty dead? I mean, have you heard any feedback on that?
Yes.
Oh, yes, yeah. That is the rule, Eric. Always come to the microphone.
So in my short time here, I've heard that the afternoon is slower, but is still being used. I know that across the state, the demand for pickleball keeps continuing to rise, so.
Okay. And I mean, I'm not saying I'm for this or against this. This is just the wheels turning with the information as it's coming tonight.
Jennifer.
Is that if the city isn't using a lot of the 50% time, that's the non-members, could you guys just kind of take on more of that instead of building new? And then you mentioned Pewaukee and Brookfield and Heartland, and then it makes me think, are we gonna oversaturate with, pickleball courts and then they're not used? I don't know. Again, this is all just thinking out loud as,
Well, I can answer some of those.
Yeah.
Paul, you can step in there too. Those courts are already built, those other courts, and we still have times that are overbooked. Now, the afternoon is not free, not community time. It's evenings and weekends.
okay.
So I think a better question would be,
There are some times during
Yeah.
the week, yeah.
and also there are some certain times that, like, we have women's time from 8:30 to 10:30 on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and that's a really busy time. Yeah, we could probably do a little bit of this and that and everything, but, this is 1 year old. What's going to happen in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? This is a fast-growing sport. I think it's time to build now. We built 10. We didn't think we needed 10. Nobody said 10. They're all looking at 6 or 8. So I think another 10 would be.
And I know that you guys are booming and it's, a sport that's of a lot of popularity, but, the one thing that I keep thinking of is, I think it was 18 years ago when our community built the Paps Farms YMCA. Within like 4 or 5 months, that building was busting at the seams. I mean, you drove by there, after New Year's Eve, there was no parking. Now the place is a ghost town. So that's always the worry, is what will it look like in, 10, 15, 18 years?
The YMCA is a ghost
I
town?
wouldn't say ghost town, but it's definitely not what it was. They just had to shut down their swim program for the kids because there wasn't enough participation. They had to shut, that's a whole nother debate, another conversation.
Yeah,
but-
let's stay
Yeah,
on.
but the point
Is
is,
this an open
the
forum?
point
I'd
is,
like to hear from Mr. Barber.
what does it look like years later?
So a couple of things on that, and a lot of people have asked me, will this do what racquetball did? And sorry, I'm Paul Barber, I think I got introduced, but, will this go like racquetball, where racquetball was hot for a while and then it died? Couple big differences. One is, if you ever come around, even during the non-member time, you will see that pickleball is a very social activity. People get together, they play, they switch out, they switch in. It's not you come with 4 people and you play and you leave. So, and a couple, other things that the club, and pickleball's growth is over 40%, I think, nationwide. Our growth is like 100%, and that's because of some of the things we're doing. And so let me just talk through a few of those things. I think it was about 2 years ago we were here, and since that time, there've just been a ton going on. And we provide lessons. The city provides lessons. We also provide lessons, drills. The city has provided more than 50 lessons this summer through the Park and Rec. We've provided 60 plus lessons and drills for members. I think we've grown, as you heard, from 110 to 1,025. And then there are just other things we're doing. If you look in the community, we're the Bethany Recovery Center. Some of our members are spending time there every week to give lessons. We did Girl Scout troop lessons. They even have a nice little badge for participating in the Girl Scout lessons.
The badge looks very similar to the tennis badge.
I'm sure it does. Well, that's a pickleball. That's clearly a pickleball. So I think a lot is happening that makes this a very inclusive, positive thing. If you play pickleball, it's unlike most sports in that 8-year-olds and 80-year-olds can play together. If you look at the pictures, I think you'll see just tons of people. If you go back at these pictures, you see a lot of families, 3 generations playing together. We've had some of you out to the courts, and some of you have played, and it truly is a very social experience. People bring a beer on a Thursday night and play and then go back. So my feeling is that we are at a fairly important point here. We can either choose to live with what we have and try and make do and then just become another place, or we can keep what we've earned as a premier pickleball facility as well as a premier pickleball club. And it's those two things that are working well. Some of the other places have a lot of courts. Waukesha has probably got more courts than us, but they don't have a very active club that is pulling it all together. So I think we've got something unique here. I think that by moving to 20 courts, you move from being a
local facility to a regional facility. You're bringing in national tournaments. You can bring in, if you choose to, you don't have to, but you can bring in people for the weekend to spend time doing this. So I feel like we've got a lot of opportunity moving forward, but if we don't take that opportunity, others are going to get into it. So a couple of things, and we did work with MSI just to mark out where those courts would be. So hopefully you can see that. That's about where those courts would end up being. There's plenty of space there. It's still far enough, we believe, from the residents and from the housing that's going up there, and we've taken a look at that. We believe that the parking is adequate to get us through the current parking to the right on the top right of the screen. And you know, one question you had is how many of the residents and how busy are the courts during non-club times? And during non-club times, I've been there Monday nights where they've been full. And so the 10 courts are being used by we're assuming, based on the discussions, we've had a lot of residents, about 80% residents of City of Oconomowoc, and then other people coming in. So, you know, I think this is really what we're trying to ask for. And I'm happy to share these slides. You know, we think that Oconomowoc can be the regional place for pickleball. I think we have more and better courts per person or per resident than Madison or any of the other cities that are being touted. And I think we can grow our member base. I think we can have dedicated courts so that any time the community can play, they don't have to only play at non-club times. And so, you know, why Northeast Park? Why couldn't we do it somewhere else? Those are good questions and things that have, as we've talked to some people, they've asked. And you know, I really believe that pulling people into a premier facility allows them to make sure they know that when they go there, they're going to find courts. They know that they're going to find good players. They connect more socially. We need less volunteers to manage the courts and make sure that people are playing, to coach, and to do those things. And you know, frankly, we've talked to our membership and asked them what do they want us to do. And there's two things they want us to do. They want us to do more courts at Northeast Park, and they want us to have winter play. And so we think that that winter play will be dealt with by private enterprise, but we believe that the right thing for us to do from a court perspective is to build more at Northeast Park. I'll stop there.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Okay, so I too was of the thought process, you know, what if down the road this whole sport becomes obsolete? I guess we could say that about anything, but I did have that thought process as well. As far as the maintenance, you said going forward then you'd be contributing $50,000?
So currently we give $20 per member. And so today that is roughly $20,000 that we give per year to the city for maintenance. When we originally negotiated, it was going to be $5, and we didn't want a fixed amount because we don't want to be, as a club, we don't have people who want to be liable for paying the city a certain amount of money. So we ended up saying, we'll just give you $20 a person. Our current fees allow us to do that as well as save for future court growth. And this will not, these 10 courts will not be the last 10. And we will work with other communities to build more courts. That's part of our goal as a club. But that money, the $50, the rest of that the fees will go towards court development. No one is paid on our club. It's a totally volunteer.
And do we know approximately what our maintenance costs are annually?
So it's
Just
going
on
to
the
be
10?
very similar to tennis courts. And my understanding is that like once every 7, 8 years, you need to resurface, and that costs a lot, but it's more than covered by the amount that we're putting in. I think Craig estimated that last time at about 40,000, you know, in 8 years, and we are now paying 20,000 a year. So, you know, I think as we go forward, we may want to rethink that and renegotiate it. The good news is that I think we have a stipulation that any of those funds can only be used for pickleball-related expenses. So I think that's the deal.
And, I mean, obviously, since we didn't get a lot of information about this ahead of time, we may be able to give some direction tonight, but we'll probably need a lot more information before we can actually make a decision. And I think for a lot of us, that would also be like, quantifying, it'd be really hard to have a specific number, but kind of quantifying in our minds what benefit that brings to our community. Obviously, if there's tournaments, people are staying in hotels and eating in our restaurants and whatever the case may be. But that will be something that we'll have to decide is a benefit to the community before we're saying we want to come out of pocket now to do these extra 10 courts.
Yeah, I think I've got just a quick slide on, I think the residents obviously are going to benefit from this in terms of, this is a great physical activity, there's health-related benefits for them. There are no, there's no dedicated courts in Lake Country other than these, and so this is the place to go. One of the things that we really need the new courts to do is to allow more interaction with the schools and start to get school programs going. For the sport to ultimately grow, and it will, we want to get school programs going. We've already talked to Jason at the school that's there, Meadowview, and they're very interested in working with us. We've talked to the Homeschoolers Network, and they're very interested. Our challenge is court time. And so today, there's just very little time that we can dedicate because our members are demanding the time that they were kind of allocated by funding the courts. I think that there's some tourism and economic opportunity. I don't know how to quantify that. I'm sure other people do. But I think there is in the future. I can just tell you that many of us play tournaments outside of this, and Economock is known. People say, oh, you're from that club and from that court. So it's a good thing. I honestly think it's a good thing, but I think those are the things that we have to think through, and you have to decide.
Well, Council, as you look at the slides and also hear the presenters, what they're looking for is what information you need so they can put a proposal and pack it together if you want to go down this direction. So that's why you have nothing ahead of time. Alderman Rozak, you were next.
Yeah, thanks for coming, guys. I'd like to move forward with something. I think it makes sense to at least explore. In my head, what I think we should do is renegotiate the deal. If you guys are that big and that successful, and I'm not saying more than the $20 per 75, but potentially expanding that length of the deal, to 15 years or 15 with an option for another 5 or something, if it's that successful. I mean, I think picking up the tab for that moving forward is a good thing. So if there's already interest in renegotiating that deal, I think now would be a time to put this all together. A couple things I do have concerns about is spending taxpayer money in the city for a lot of people from the town and Summit coming in. But that is true as I kind of reflected on that thought. That happens with a lot of our parks, with our beach, with our tennis courts, with whatever else we do. We have great, bike trails, we have great parks in the city, and there's people from Summit and the town and Dousman that are coming here to use that stuff. There's no question. So I don't think that alone is going to dissuade me from backing this. One other comment, though, I do generally have about what the city has put in. It's not just the land, because the land was pricey, but also the parking and the bathrooms. So, without the parking was part of the deal we cut with St. Matthews and the school. The parking lot was hundreds of thousands, if not, close to $1 million for that whole area. So there's a lot more that goes into it than just the little parcel of land. But I'm interested in exploring it. I think we should explore the deal. We should explore how we fund it. I've asked Mark for some information on park impact fees, so we'll definitely need some information on that, because that would be a way to fund a portion of this is with park impact fees.
Yep. No, great comments. I'm going to keep going. Alderman Mulder.
Yeah, thanks for coming, guys. I did speak with the neighbors because if you follow the pickleball news or just the news in general, pickleball noise is a huge issue. There's lawsuits nationwide about it. And so when we did meet out there, I went and I walked the perimeter, and there's noise. It was a pretty busy evening. I think it was a Tuesday night or Thursday night, so the club was playing. Mixed from the residents about how much noise they would hear, but moving another 250 feet towards the nearest neighbors, and then there's going to be closer neighbors on the north. So like we talked about, for me to vote for this, soundproofing on the exterior of the whole perimeter, I think is required.
What about some plantings or something too?
And plus some pine trees or something else that's going to be a noise break. I don't think the light pollution is going to be a big deal once those go in later this month. But overall, I do think noise is something we need to be. And most of the residents, they understand, they live near a park, you're going to hear, but the pop, 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 pop of pickleball
Yeah.
is particularly
I
disturbing
did do,
to some.
just based on our discussion, we
Yeah.
did some quick research on noise stuff, and if you look in, other cities where there's a density that's way higher than this, and there's definitely ways to manage pickleball noise. So, all over the place, there are these pickleball acoustic wraps and things like that. So, whether we commit to doing that until someone, sees what it actually is going to be, I would say that would make sense, because it's all stuff that you can add. So, but we do not want to have neighbors unhappy with us. And, we're trying our very best to, make sure that people are living by the rules and trying to be good neighbors.
In full disclosure, I'm a member of the club, love pickleball, come try it. But I want to make sure that I'm being fair about it, right?
Yeah, I appreciate it.
And so, another thing that I think for the community is really important is that there are always 5 courts reserved for non-club time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I think it's, I've heard from my kids, but also neighbors, they go up there, they want to play pickleball, it's club night, from 5 to 7 is when most families can get out there, and a couple nights a week it's taken up. So having courts always reserved for free play. Can't guarantee you're going to get on it, they might be taken, but the club won't have claimed them. I think you can get ample court time and still reserve those, and probably expand the hours you do have.
I absolutely think we can.
I think that's a great thing for city residents to have, that they're paying $200,000, they should get to use it at all times, as long as the court's available, much like tennis, right?
So it kind of goes back to negotiating maybe something new.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
proposed by Alderman Rozak. Alderman Ellis.
Okay. What months are pickleball actually used at this time?
Sorry, say that again.
What months is the pickleball actually being used at this time?
So I think we've played in every month, but we end up opening in the April-May timeframe, and then we close in typically around November, right before Thanksgiving. However, they take the nets down and the siding down, but the club leaves nets there, portable nets. And so if there's a warm day, which there are now more of, in like a December or January, and the snow melts, then people are playing. And so I think I played every month of this last year there. You can play pickleball in 20-degree weather as long as the courts are dry. So, and there's no harm to the courts, and we play as much as we can. We prefer outdoor to indoor any day. Most of the indoor court availability is wood, and it doesn't have the same bounce and everything else. But with what's going on with the weather we're having, I think over time we're going to get more and more play on these courts.
Have you thought about enclosed the facility?
We have, as a club, we believe that there are a number of commercial enterprises, Chicken Pickle, and most of them have a profit motive, and they're selling food and drink, and pickleball is a draw. And so do we want to, as a club, own an indoor facility with the heating and all the costs that go with that and all the effort that goes with that? As a board, we have decided that's not our priority. Our priority is to get outdoor courts first. And many of our significant funders in the past would be people who spend winters in Florida or in warmer quarters. And so, the economics become much more difficult. Whether we could have kind of one of those balloons that go over swimming pools and things like that, I think we would love to look at that and consider it. I don't think that the neighbors would appreciate it where the courts are today. So,
Alderman
The last
Shellpepper.
thing,
Oh,
that was almost done, I'm sorry.
I thought you were done.
No,
Sorry.
almost.
Go
The
ahead.
last thing that I'm really, one of the things that I'm concerned about is, and Rosa brought it up, was the parking. Because it's not just about getting 10 more pickleball courts. There's a whole bunch behind it that goes through. And it's going to be the parking. It's going to be the facilities as far as, for purposes of relieving oneself. And so it's a little, I think it's a little more complicated than just throwing down 10 more.
Yeah, no, I understand that. There's much more of a plan to the park. And I think the master plan had some discussion of parking at least for the future, if there are other types of things there. I'm just saying that the parking that exists today would be sufficient for the additional 10 courts.
And finally, what I wanted to mention is that we also, as a council, have an opportunity to do something with our youth in reference to baseball. And so there's a whole bunch of things that we need to consider. And I think pickleball is really good. I've tried it. I understand the growth. As a business owner, when I opened up, I had one person. In 3 months, I had 400. But then what happens is it kind of teeters off a little bit, and then it kind of slows down, so you got to take that into consideration. Like I said, we've got a lot of other types of things that we need to consider, so.
I fully understand that.
Alderman Shellpepper, I think you had a hand up.
Yeah, so how many acres do we have left in the park then overall? And you know, that's one question.
Sure.
You know, how much did we originally pay per acre for the park? What would that value be today? I think those are all important things to match up with what we're dealing with now. But then overall, like, this was a park. You know, this is the Northeast Regional Park. And so the original intention of this land was to, like, be a park, not necessarily a pickleball, you know, complex. And so if we feel like a large portion of this very valuable park that was purchased with taxpayers' money with the intention of it being a park, never a single sport complex, if we decide the direction of that needs to change, I think that's got to be a holistic decision that we're all consciously agreeing to, and there needs to be some more comprehensive planning with the other sports, the other activities that are going to take place in this park to
Well, and
answer this
it's,
question now. Because I understand for the purposes of the club, there's not enough room, but I think for the purposes of the community as the park was originally envisioned, the 10 courts there with the lights that are there is probably a lot better than it would ever happened on its own. And that's great. We have that sport there. I think the requirements are being met with pickleball because we have other, you know, facilities in the city. So it's just the intent and the objective of what we want to do with that land, how we envision it going forward. I want to see that being a conscious, you know, decision.
Well, I think those are great points, and it's nice that we have our new Park Rec and Forestry Director, Eric. Eric, do you want to raise your hand? Just people saw you up there before. So I think that whole area needs a lot of work. And what I'm hearing from the group is, yes, you're interested, you'd like to see more information, and we'd like to look to see if this is a possibility. Are there other specific things that you would like this group to investigate if they want to come back with an actual proposal?
Well, one thing we need a little bit more hard numbers on the resurfacing needed for the pickleball courts. So if let's say we go to 20, I need a little bit more, like, we were kind of fast and loose, I think, the first time around. I was actually the one in the contract negotiations, Chris, that said, just take a percentage versus or do the hard number versus the percentage. You didn't want to agree to the hard number. Now we're making more than we thought. So it worked out great for us. So I was happenstancely a good negotiator there, but I'd like to know really hard numbers on what it would cost to resurface these. You know, so get someone out to give us an estimate of, okay, 8 years from now, they have to be resurfaced. It's going to be 50 grand per 10, or it's going to be 100 grand for the whole thing. That will educate us on what that agreement and that contract needs to look like as we're renegotiating.
You know,
Well, and hold on, before we go there, oh, sorry, but no, go ahead. Mayor.
Let's
Yeah.
finish there and we'll come back to you, Chaz.
well, Alderman Morosic, it so happens that Westover is being resurfaced in the immediate future, right, Eric? So you've got some, you'll have some numbers, updated numbers, and I think you probably already have those, right?
It's the same as tennis courts, so
Yeah.
it's.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
You're resurfacing tennis courts
Per
every
square
8
foot.
years or so.
It's just a per square foot. Then it should be easy for someone to come out and look at the square footage from the plans and just give us, hard numbers, look, and then, factor in some inflation and, cost of expenses and what they typically see. I think you guys are right, probably 8 to 10 years for tennis courts. So it would just be nice to know what those hard numbers are as we talk about a deal and what that means for the
I
city.
think that can be done. The other aspect too is to realize that typically if there's funds that is a private-public partnership, which is, I believe, what your request is, we usually give you a fixed number. If anything goes above and beyond our expectation, you're going to come up with the money. You're going to make sure that what is proposed to the community is built in that fashion.
Right.
So we to have overages and things like that really probably isn't an option, if I can say that for council. It's got to be something that's pretty well set. Chaz, I'm going to come back to you.
Oh, and I want to say, I guess, back to my point, if the intent is this going to be a commercial or more of a tourism-related activity, then I think that whatever contract is in place needs to be reflective of a commercial tourism-related contract and not a public park, because that's, I mean, it is to a certain extent, but it really isn't. I mean, the intent is totally different. So the whole agreement should be reanalyzed and worked from a different angle. I mean, that's my position on it, because it's not being used as a public park, as his original intent was.
You're talking about before they were built.
I'm talking about if we're going to add more courts to this, and we're going to start saying this is going to be some kind of commercial activity, is what I'm hearing. It's going to be for some sort of tournaments. We're going to be holding tournaments here. You're shaking your head no.
That's not correct, no.
Yeah. It just gives us the ability to have them if we chose to, but today we are limited to, I think, 5 days, weekend days of tournaments a year. And that's still the agreement.
That's already in the
And
agreement.
that would still stay the agreement. The idea would be to get more schools, more community activity going.
It's hard for me to understand that, because to me, I'm like, you could just reduce your time right now if you want to get the schools more
No,
involved.
no, we have a contract that's a 10-year contract with, so we
Okay,
could-
well,
No, you're right, we could reduce our club time.
So
Right.
I think,
Our members
I
are the
hear
ones who
your,
fund
I
it.
hear your viewpoint, Chaz, and I think I've heard council, and I think we're in pretty good shape, unless there are any other questions, that we need to go back, and what they've done is they've come to us and say, hey, we want to do this in 2024. I told them a few weeks ago, I said, if you want to do that, we're going into budget season. And so if this is something that is going to come from some area, whether it's impact fees, whether it's unrestricted general fund, wherever it's going to come from, you need to have the information before we get into that final budget push in our workshops. So what I'd like to do, Mark, is ask you if you can get this PowerPoint off to all the council members when we're done here, so you have some of the information there. And then if you could work, you and Eric could work with this club to kind of see what this could look like. And then council, if you have any other questions or things that you want in their proposal or things that you want to look at, please let them know, because I think they're happy to do it. But sometimes you don't know until you start the process, and that's kind of what my interpretation is of today. But it's also something, we don't have to do anything. This is just an opportunity and a request from a community. Chaz?
so Mayor, what I'm hearing you say is we're going to continue to disregard the comprehensive planning of the overall park, and we're going to just move ahead on this right now.
No.
Well, but how,
This is an option for you to
so
look
what
at.
other
for
options are being
comprehensive
presented?
plan.
What other planning is in place then for the park
This was
overall?
proposed, the 10 courts were proposed with the potential of 10 more in that location. So it's not like something brand new is being brought to us. The question is, and this is really going to have to be with Eric, with our new director, is what is that whole, that park going to look like? Because none of us know. We've had one aspect gone to look at different baseball fields and the cost of those. Now we're looking at additional pickleball courts and the cost of those. It comes back to for you guys to look at and decide, and it'll be going to the Park and Rec Board if it's something that you feel you want to go forward. So they're just reaching out. If you want to come up, identify yourself, and please come to the
I
microphone.
just want to address Alderman Shellpepper.
Maybe soon to be.
Maybe.
Just
soon.
one thing, yeah, maybe. So when I said we have a 10-year contract, we have people that donated $500,000 to this thing. based on a 10-year contract, which says we have 50% of the time during that period. So you take a week, we have 50% of those hours during the week that are allocated to our club. So they thought, okay, well, I'm 10 years, 50, I'm gonna donate money because I know that this club hopefully will, will have 50% of that time. So
But
that's
that
what I mean.
time allocation was known up front. I mean,
Yes.
right, so we knew that would
So
impact the
we can't
schools up
limit that,
front.
though.
Right.
I mean, we can't, that'd be unfair to
No,
them.
I know, but you're saying you want to add more for the schools, as in it's like we didn't know the schools were already going to be limited in their ability to use that time because of the 50% requirement. So I guess that's,
I think what I'm sorry, I'm Judy Burkhofer, I'm also a member of the board. I think, Alderman, what we didn't realize was the growth that we were going to have and get to the point of 1,030-some members. And we're still seeing growth every day. And it's not been by advertising, it's been by word of mouth. And to me, that just shows you how popular this sport is. And it brings me joy every time I'm out there and I see a family with little toddlers coming out there and they're putting a pickleball paddle in their hand and they're having a blast. But the other point I wanted to make, and I don't have the exact numbers, we'll have to verify this, but the overall park acreage, I believe, was close to 40 acres. So even if we did build the additional 10 courts, we're only up to 2 acres. So you still have between 30 and 40 acres for the rest of the overall park, and whether it's baseball or soccer or softball, what have you. So I think maybe, with the right negotiation, we could accomplish both.
Alderman Rozak?
Just briefly, and I don't presume to know anything about park design, I do think the spot where they're gonna, if they were to add, is probably the best spot to put it, because that little portion there that kind of folds down, kind of dies off the end of the screen, and there's not really a lot of space there anyway. The bulk of the park is above it in that weird kind of kidney-shaped. I'll be honest with you, I voted against the Northeast Regional Park because of the cost per acreage was very high. It was probably, I think, 47 to 52 grand? 47,000 an acre is what we spent on that park, and it still hasn't been filled in with anything. The only thing that's there of any use right now is the pickleball courts. So we spent $1.5 million-ish on a park, and the only thing we've gotten good out of it so far is the pickleball courts. So.
And a walking path around it.
Well, yeah, you can walk around a place that has no trees and no view, no nothing. The park doesn't really have a comprehensive plan, and that has been a problem. I don't like the piecemealing, but it is the one thing out there that actually kind of works, because you have the playground next to it, the parking next to it, the kids can play. If you're doing pickleball, there's a playground. So there is some congruity there I think we should recognize. But I think a lot of good questions, but I think we should explore it. I'm happy to help you guys with the contract too and look at it, like I did last time, and kind of give the eye of the council and an attorney on that thing to kind of just flesh it out. Because I think there's probably some improvements there, and if there become commercial tournaments, that's something that could be addressed in the contract as well. If there's a massive tournament and you guys bring in $50,000 in tournament fees, but you're taking up all the parking, and it's kind of a mess and nobody can play there for the weekend, there should be some give and take there, so.
Alderman Ellis?
I was talking to an individual the other day, and they mentioned, or they questioned me, and they said, so what's the master plan? I'm a visual person. I need to see exactly what that is, or has the potential of looking like. This is a public park. I think it's still a public park, right? Okay, I want to make sure of that. And I would really like to, and this is not to you guys, this is to us. I'd really like to see some sort of a vision on what that park could look like. It's very important because we're piecemealing it. And I'd rather not do that and get some options and some ideas. I personally, I don't want you guys to think that you're going to go ahead and make this proposal and then we're going to go ahead and say, go for it. We're there. because I need to see more options. We've got a lot of demand, and I want to make sure that we can do the very best economically and also for our people, for our residents, to make sure that we're utilizing that park the way it needs to be. You had mentioned 40 acres. Is that all we have there?
37.5.
Jason? 35? Okay.
I thought it was 33 acres, but then we had to subtract out the pond.
So it's like
the
33
stormwater,
acres?
So there's probably 29 to 30 acres
29,
of
30, okay.
usable area.
And so, and we're talking about another one of that, of the 29, so we're talking about, and then nothing else in terms of any other collateral use on the parking or anything else? It would just be 1 acre of space.
Well, it's actually more than that, because then we're going to have to put some more parking there, too.
No plans for more parking.
I thought,
But if we put in, let's assume, this is a huge assumption, if we put in another 10 spots,
It's fine.
It's fine.
So what does a soccer field take? What does a baseball diamond take in terms of acreage, usable acreage? I mean, this is just all things
Yeah.
they're worth-
and
Those are all really good questions, you guys. I want to kind of stay focused on this. And I think the key part that I'm hearing, and I know I'm frustrating you, Alderman Shellpepper, but we all agree is we have no strategic plan, a really big plan there. We have a lot of plans, but it hasn't gone to that next level. And so your comments are valid, but what we want to do is, if you're going to come forward with something like this, what other information do you need to do that? If we could have a strategic plan of that area in the next year, that would be fantastic. But I've learned that that takes a lot more time than a year. And so the question is, what does council hear? Something that could be a proposal. They'll bring it back to you. If you don't like it and you want to wait for a strategic plan, you have that option. It's also something that is something that you want more information on. And when you think of anything, email Mark and say, Mark, I'd like to know about this or about that, so that that information can then be put together so you can feel more comfortable about, because we're not making any decisions, we're just trying to see, these guys came to us and proposed it, and really, really thank you for doing that. You've done a beautiful job with the first set of courts. Will there be another set of courts? I don't know. But I think that it's a good option for us to look at with more details. Agreed. Alderman Shellpepper.
Well, and I think the difference here, though, opposed to those first 10, is we're looking for 250 grand, right? Is that what I'm hearing? Or 200 in impact fees?
Their request was 200 to split the $400 cost. That was their initial thought process.
Right. And so
So
that
roughly that's an estimate, but it's not defined yet, because they're not going to go through the whole process if you guys tell them to go jump in the lake.
right. And so how much money do we have in impact fees to spend in that area?
so right now, the impact fees are at a negative balance because we built the park and purchased the land and did all of that. We've been paying that off. We started out around 1.2 million. That number got lowered down to, we're a negative 400,000 at this time, but we have funds that'll be dedicated to the construction of the lift station for the restrooms, about 400,000, so that'll be another, so that'll put us a negative 800,000 in that account. At the current cost, that would be 273 homes that would have to be constructed to pay that 800,000. If you wanted to add another 200,000 at that number, it's about another 60 homes. We build 80 to 100 homes in the community each year, so I'm going to say 80. So just to give you a rough sense of, where the dollars are coming in, what's out there, and the impact of this.
So we'd actually be taking out impact fee debt to pay for this. We don't even have it accrued.
And that's how
Yeah,
we have.
so I mean, that's another interesting piece to this whole conversation. That's fine, but it's money we're owed that we're no longer able to spend on anything else
It's just, but
at the
that
park.
funding mechanism,
So-
Alderman, is an option.
Yeah.
There are other funding mechanisms, or we can just say no.
Yeah.
So I think that attacking that when we don't have all the information, which you said at the beginning of this, is hard to hear, because right now we're just in the discovery phase to say, hey, is this something we want to do? And these folks have come to us to do that. And you guys are in control. You'll vote and decide what you want to do. It's yes or no. Alderman Altman-Cloth.
Just one last thing, because Kevin, had brought up, how the importance of getting baseball fields in here and those different things. I know Mulder had mentioned, or not Mulder, Rosick had mentioned a different location for the baseball fields. But looking at this map, and I remember when we toured this area during a Park and Rec meeting, there's really not that much space on that lower half. So to put another pickleball court right there really does make a lot of sense for the use of that area. I know we're worried about piecemealing this area, and I am too, don't take me wrong, but it does flow nicely, even though we don't have a big strategic plan for it.
Yeah.
That's all.
Eric, are you hearing the comments about strategic plan?
He's taking good notes
So
back
there are a
there.
lot of different layouts of ideas, so if you could make that a priority and work with Mark on that, that would be great. Alderman Mulder, and then Alderman Spiegelberg after that.
I'm good.
I was just going to say, I think the Pickleball Club has heard all of our concerns, all of our great comments, positive, negative, whatever, and we'll take all of that into consideration before they come back before us. So thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your
Thank you.
consideration and the great partnership we have to date. It's been very successful. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Next up is a Wingspan development discussion.
A lot per lot. It is, it used when I started.
With us this evening is Chris Coleman with Wingspan, who's going to share with you what their plans are for the 59 acres that they've purchased in Papsburg.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Fry, members of staff. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come before you tonight and share some drawings and some pictures with you and get some feedback. We've been working on this plan with intermittent and periodic and very insightful comments from staff, trying to be respectful of the process over the course of a little more than 9 months. So we're very excited to come tonight and make this presentation. I'd like to start with a little introduction of myself. As Bob mentioned, I'm Chris Coleman with Wingspan Development. Wingspan Development is a sister company to Nicholas and Associates. That name may be familiar to you because Nicholas and Associates has done work here in town on some of the school projects, alone and with Oliver Construction. Nicholas and Associates over the past 45 years has forged a reputation for quality, timeliness, and commitment to execution. A project that they start, they're going to finish, and they're going to finish it in the highest level. The company is family-owned by the Papa-Nicholas family. Some of you may know Nick Papa-Nicholas Jr. He's the president of both companies, Nicholas and Associates and Wingspan. You may know him from the school projects, or you may have seen him or his family in town. He is up here quite frequently. I'm not going to fib and tell you that he wasn't born outside of Chicago, but I can share with you that from the time that he set foot on the campus at St. Norbert's College, Wisconsin has held a special place in his heart, so much so that he married a girl from Brookfield, and for the past 10 years, he and she and their boys have spent the summers and every major holiday up here in Oconomowoc. So if home is where memories are made, Oconomowoc is his home. So you've got a local partner here. So in March, we purchased 59 acres of Pabst Farm, immediately east of the Fleet Farm. And I'm sure you've got questions about the entirety of Pabst Farms and what's happening, and I believe there may be a subsequent meeting to talk about the entirety of Pabst Farms. But tonight, I really just want to talk about the 59 acres that we purchased and own and have a plan for. There's a lot of history and expectations and promises and inferences associated with Pabst Farms, but I think that everybody shares a common interest in wanting a vibrant, successful development. So I'm bringing a vision to you tonight that we believe will succeed in today's retail and commercial real estate environment, and we want to begin executing this vision next year. So this is not a plan that we're going to, that we're just bringing to you tonight. That's a dream. right? This is something that we want to get your input on, and we want to go, okay? I'll do almost all of the speaking tonight, and I apologize in advance for that. But I also have with me some very talented people. Nick Patera and Danny O'Brien are here from Tesca. I think they're familiar faces. They've got a great reputation. They've done a lot of work in the Lake Country. And Tommy Cisaldo, who's part of our Wingspan team. Other members of our team with this project include Pinnacle Engineering. I think that's a local name that you'll be familiar with. There's a bunch of other people that fall under Pinnacle's contract that you'd be familiar with. Studio 222 is our architect for the residential component of this vision. Camboris Theodore is the architect for the retail, restaurant, and office, the mixed-use architecture. And JAK is the architect for the technology and innovation hub. So based on conversations with staff and looking at the property for a long time, candidly, Nick Papanicholas has been looking at the property a lot longer than I have. And one of his questions has always been, why is nothing happening at Paps Farm? But looking at this vision and why we believe our vision will work is really some points I want you to consider. Is one, based on our conversations with staff, reading the ordinances and the code, we believe that this plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the GDP. Okay, each component of the vision is viable on its own with strong market demand. Okay, when contemplating a purchase of land at Paps Farm, we wanted to purchase a parcel that was large enough so that we could have the scale to deliver a complete vision. And it's ironic that you guys were just talking about the piecemealing of the park, notwithstanding pickleball. By the way, pickleball is hugely popular, huge, and growing. Like the trajectory of the demographic of the country aligns perfectly with pickleball. That's not, they didn't pay me to say that. I just said that. But you talked about piecemealing, and one of the things that we were concerned about when we were entering Paps Farm was that we wanted to get enough land that we could control our vision, right? That we could execute something that we knew would get to the finish line. We didn't want to be worrying about what's going to happen with that adjoining parcel, or what is somebody going to propose or not propose. We wanted to be able to take enough property and complete something, okay? There's adequate infrastructure and utilities on the property to accommodate what we're proposing. You know, our vision doesn't require any more infrastructure or expense on the part of the city. And I hope you'll see, I certainly think, that our plan that I'm going to show you shows a very thoughtful and rigorous design process. Okay, really taking into account the land and the most viable uses and executing those uses in the most attractive way possible. So to give you, everybody knows where Paps Farm is, but to give you a better idea of where our specific 59 acres is, we essentially extend from Paps Farm, or from Fleet Farm east to the woods, and from Paps Farm Boulevard south to 94. And it incorporates the pond or the lake, whatever you want to consider it, but it's that 59 acres. Okay, and there have been several concepts for this land that the city has seen over the course of time. Some of you have seen them, some of them it was your predecessors. But one of the design concepts is what's called a regional power mall or a power center. Okay, and unfortunately that animal no longer exists. It's no longer viable due to shopping, the changes in the way people shop, and the changes in the way retailers operate. It just doesn't exist. That's a unicorn now. However, that doesn't mean it's not a great site that, well planned, could be extremely viable. And I think that's what our vision is. So in my presentation tonight, we're going to really talk about 4 main uses of the property. We've got a technology and innovation hub, a residential town center, a restaurant retail area, and then another area that includes drive-through, 2 drive-throughs, and some office retail. This is the general layout that you're seeing right there. This is the same general layout, but we've superimposed the footprints of the actual buildings that we're proposing onto the land plan. We've also shown all the walking trails and the amenities, the park spaces, things like that. We also showed some of the stormwater detention basins that we'll be using or creating, and that will also have an aesthetic use. But I think it's much more powerful to see it in its rendered, completed fashion. So this is our vision as completed, looking from Paps Farm Boulevard to the south, kind of to the southeast, right? In the foreground there, you've got Paps Farm Boulevard. Then you've got to the left, you've got the restaurant, retail. On the right, you've got the 2 drive-throughs. Behind the drive-throughs, you've got
Chris,
the-
there should be a mouse up
Oh,
there
I'm
to help
sorry.
you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This might help. All right, so this is the dining and retail. This is the residential. This right here is what I'll refer to later as the town center, because you've got first floor retail here with residential above. Back here is the technology and innovation hub. This right here is retail and office, actually. And then this is the 2 drive-throughs. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that. Sorry. So this is looking to the southeast. This is another view, kind of looking almost straight south. This back here at the top, that's Aurora Medical, right? This is looking over the pond to the west. This is Aurora back over here again. This is our technology. You can see the silo for Fleet Farm right there, and the Fleet Farm parking field. And this is looking over this is the Fleet Farm parking lot, technology and innovation, residential, town center, dining, quick serve drive-through, and then office retail. Okay, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to dive in a little bit deeper on each one so that you get more context of what our plan is, and then hopefully that'll fuel more discussions. And to an earlier point, Mark or Bob, somebody can send these to you, this slide deck to you, so that you can have it, and whatever questions come up, please let me know. I'm more than happy to meet you somewhere for a cup of coffee or whatever, talk through it. I'll make myself available at your convenience.
And one thing that's helpful, because this is a big project too, is you can also filter all those questions through Mark. That way the answers will go to everybody. We can also do that like we did on Olympia as well. So Mark, maybe you could help facilitate that.
One
Yeah,
really
go
quick
ahead.
question. So the slides that we're seeing right now, have those been provided to either you, the mayor, or the city staff prior to this meeting?
No.
It's just, once again, we kind of feel like we're going in blind on not
Yeah,
being able to be prepared
and I
with questions
apologize
for
for
you.
that. But so we've had meetings with staff. We had the staff department heads meeting where we looked at a prior concept. So we've been going through this process, but we've been trying to be very respectful of communicating in an orderly fashion. You know, we don't want some people to feel like they're seeing stuff and other people not. So to the extent that that's our fault, I apologize, but we have been trying to be judicious in how we're communicating and making sure that we're treating everybody fairly.
So to give you an idea too, Bob Duffy and I drove down, about a month ago, Bob? And we went through their current facility in northern Illinois, and they showed us different ideas and concepts, and we gave them feedback. And our recommendation is that if they want to present this, if they could present elevations and things that give you a good feeling of what it looks like, that's what you're seeing. But this is, I don't think you've seen them, Bob, have you? No, I mean, this is the first time I've seen them too. So that was kind of where the process was, to try to get it closer to what would align with some of our rules and regulations here in the city. But then they're here just like Pickleball was, to say, hey, give us your feedback. What would you like to see more? Do you have questions in that same process? But it brings up a good point, and I apologize for this aside, because maybe we need to better define what committee of the whole meetings are about, and making sure, because staff and myself, we want to make sure you get everything that you want. But the committee of the whole is bringing things forth this way. Maybe we need to change that if you want more before you come. But a lot of times people want to tell their own story. They want to show you and be able to answer. But this is just the beginning process. So back to you, Chris.
Thank you, thank you. All right, so we're going to start with our Area 1, which is our Technology and Innovation Hub. And this would fall within the permitted and conditional uses of the General Commercial Zoning District, which is the underlying zoning district there. And our Technology and Innovation Hub is what I'm going to describe as a highly stylized commercial development targeted toward corporations and enterprises on the leading edge of technology and innovation in whatever their industry is, okay? So they're early adopters. That's a term that's often used. Is one company or enterprise an early adopter of a specific technology or innovation? Our ideal tenant infuses technology and innovation into their business strategy and operations. The floor plans of the buildings will provide the most flexibility possible to incorporate offices, showrooms, conference rooms, drafting and design clusters, research, storage, and concept fabrication. We plan to allocate about 20,000 square feet in one of the buildings for a state-of-the-art maker space. I don't know if you're familiar with that term. And these maker space can be a launching pad for students, entrepreneurs, or budding enterprises. It gives them a place where they can really hone their ideas and then launch from there. Pabst Farm will become a hub of technology and innovation, feeding on itself and creating a self-sustaining vibrancy. And that's why we're calling it the Technology and Innovation Hub, because we anticipate that it will become a hub. So this is the area that we're talking about. Let me go to the next one. It's this area here on the south. It goes right along the interstate, right along 94. So it's tucked along the highway. There's lush landscaping around 4 80,000 square foot buildings with a courtyard in between the buildings, and then these landscaped passive areas behind the buildings. We've got all kinds of walking trails and pedestrian-friendly activities designed into the plan, including a barbecue pavilion here. We've got a fishing pier. We've got
And pickleball courts.
pickle. We got pickle. There'd be no problem with noise here because you're right on the highway. No one's going to complain about noise at these pickleball courts.
We need 10 of there. We need 10.
We've got room here for a chipping green, or this could be like a community garden, something like that.
Is that going to be public space, or is that going to be for the
It's going to be,
Innovation Center?
well, I believe within the GDP, and Jason can correct me, within the spirit of Pabst Farm, it's supposed to be private but a public use. I'm stating that fairly? Like, it's supposed to be welcoming to the public. Our vision for this is that, yes, the public could use that. I mean, we don't want to get in the business of regulating the times for the pickleball courts, but to the extent that someone from the neighborhood to the north wants to come and fish on that little fishing pier, we're not gonna police that. So then there's no deer stand planned here.
Well, yeah, that's going to be.
Is this a public, is this being recorded? There's no deer stands. So you'll see here, I want you to notice this. You know, this is not by mistake. Tommy did not insert this mistakenly. The first tenant in the first building is going to be Nicholas and Associates and Wingspan. So we're going to take 40,000 square feet of this building and move our office. Right now, our office is right by the Miller Park. We're going to move it from there to here. And Oconomowoc is going to become the home of Nicholas and Wingspan, okay? So when I say, I'm not, you know, when I say that we want to start, we want to get your feedback, we want to get it in the plan, into the soup, and then we want to start. We want to be breaking ground next year, okay? But the real power of this plan is what I call the architectural lift on the design of the buildings. So this is our vision for these buildings. You've got extremely robust mass timber components. You can see the scale of it by comparing this car here with the size of this member here. Heavy corner detailing and an overall raised architectural aesthetic, something that you have never seen in a building like this. This perspective also shows the courtyard, sorry, I keep pointing, the courtyard in between the buildings. Okay? This is the view from the, are you guys picking up my mic okay?
Yeah.
This is the view from what is the southeast corner of our property, looking to the northwest. You can see the treasured pickleball courts here in the foreground. This is the barbecue pavilion. But you can see how these corners really add an element of interest to these buildings that's not common. Okay, from this perspective, this is a little bit closer up. You still got 94s on your left here, but you can begin to see the impact of the glazing and the glass on the elevation. Okay, and then this is the view from the highway as people drive by and they see this, and it's really going to be like a showpiece along 94. And this picture, this even shows the glazing better. So this is right in the middle of the building, right? So you've got these really robust ornamentation features with the heavy timber on the ends, but then the middle is not naked, right? We continue the architectural detailing all the way through the building and then incorporate this member here right in the middle to give it a really nice punch. And we think that, Wisconsin is unique in that it's got a pedigree of a lot of really innovative companies that we think will want to be part of this. They're going to want to associate their name with this technology and innovation hub. So that's just one park, okay? So then as we move north from there, we're going to talk about this area here that includes the retail.
I'm going to stop you for a second.
Sure.
Alderman Spiegelberg, you had a question on Area 1?
Yeah. So overall, with the whole complex, you said there's would be no effect on our infrastructure, that the infrastructure is there. But with the technology and innovation hub, what type of extra demand for telecommunications will that demand? And I'm assuming there's not the infrastructure now to take care of that.
Well, there's two parts of infrastructure. What I'm gonna categorize it as infrastructure that we install, and then infrastructure that would be an obligation of the city. As it regards an obligation of the city, there's nothing else for the city to do. We're gonna have to do work, a lot of work on the property, but that's not gonna be a burden to the city. And in terms of fiber optics, there was just a recent upgrade to fiber optics in the area.
I think we can go up to like 1 terabyte out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of fiber optics.
We got fiber optic everywhere out there.
It went around me.
I was just gonna say probably more than you.
I have a hot spot. Anyway,
Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
great question.
Okay, so this is it's really areas 2 and 3.
Before you jump into 2 and 3, Councilman, do you have any other questions on Area 1? Okay.
I
go.
do have a lot of questions, but I think it should be reserved till the end. I'm
Okay.
gonna wait till the end, because it's kind of all one big thing.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay? I don't know if I'm happy or nervous about that.
Be nervous. Just kidding.
All right, so in this area of the plan, we have 2 dining uses on the north side. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going the wrong way. So we've got 2 dining uses on the north side. You can think of this as like an upscale dining hall or upscale food hall. And then flanked to the south by first floor retail with residential above. So this creates that town center type feeling where you're going to drive in here and you're going to see residences above the retail. And then as it transitions to the south, it becomes all residential with a little clubhouse here. An earlier concept that we did had more residential actually up on Pabst Farm Boulevard, but we got feedback, so we reoriented the plan and rotated those buildings away from Pabst Farm to get to the plan that you see here. Again, we're going to switch from the plan view to show you the 3D rendering. So this is that town center feel. On the left, you've got the dining halls. We'll talk more about those in a second. And on the right here, you have the retail with the residential above. So as you pull in here, you're gonna essentially have retail commercial on both sides. This is a perspective from Pabst Farm Boulevard, looking to the south. We call this architecture mirroring. The buildings are designed similarly, but the colors are contrasting. So they're kind of like a yin and yang with this pavilion in between that can be used for outdoor dining, gaming. You can see we've got 2 courts here. This could be bocce, it could be bags. You could reserve this for a private event. And then we've got a big chess piece here. We joke in the office that are we chess people or checkers people? We don't know, jury's still out, see? And then as you come through here, you've got the other side of the street. You can see the retail here on the first floor, and then the residential above, more residential behind. This is a close-up of the corner of one of the dining hall buildings, and you'll notice the brick and siding, both vertical and horizontal, complementing each other to deliver a very clean, rich look. The entrance is both understated but prominent, and the architectural design itself is kind of its own ornamentation. We like to say that simple can be rich. And this is it at night. With all the glazing and the light coming through, we think it looks really dramatic at night. This is another view of the courtyard or the pavilion. Looking through to the residential, you can't, because of the landscaping, you can't really see it, but that first floor retail is down here. And you can see all the various uses there. This is looking from the east building through the pavilion to the west building. And I should have noted that each of these buildings, there's this central pavilion, but each one of them has their own private outdoor space on opposite ends. So this is more quote-unquote communal between the 2 buildings, but then they also have private outdoor space on the ends. In terms of the residential architecture, again, it's simple, but with critical detailing to make it feel rich. You've got the exposed rafter tails, you've got the FIPON, you've got a mixture of materials and colors, you've got box bay, you've got, and this is something simple but very important, is the scaling of the railings and the posts. Simple things like that. Again, if simple, well executed, can be rich. Sometimes, another thing here is the roof. This is not a simple roof in terms of its execution, but it's very clean, right? So sometimes when simple gets pulled back, and for lack of a better word, I'm gonna say cheapened, the execution doesn't feel rich. But when it's executed well, it does feel rich. This is an example, I went too far. I'm sorry. So this is a clubhouse. The property will have a clubhouse somewhat similar to this, but really what I wanted to show you on this is the backside of that same clubhouse. And I know that the city feels very important about 4-sided architecture, and this is the rear of the clubhouse. And there's no reason that you would put a raised metal seam roof on the back of the clubhouse unless great finishes were important to you. I know they're important to the city and they're also important to us. Okay, so I just showed this as an example of execution. I talked about that earlier, about Nicholas and Associates' reputation for execution. This is looking to the west, kind of through the town center to the retail and office. And that's our fourth area, okay? This is the small area here. It's kind of right at the entrance or exit from Fleet Farm. And it has 2 drive-through restaurant users, quick service restaurants, and then 2 buildings that would be office and retail, a mixed use, okay? This is the look from the west looking east. Here's one of the drive-throughs, here's another drive-through. And then this is the office retail. And then in the background here, you can see there's one of the dining halls, and this is the residential, and over here is the technology and innovation. This is the exterior of one of the quick-serve restaurants. So this may be the nicest drive-through ever designed, but it's important because, you know, this may be a more elevated architecture than a typical drive-through, but it's important because it's part of our 59 acres. If we're going to execute that vision, right, it's got to be coherent, which means that the architecture from use to use to use is not going to be exactly the same. It's not a single palette, but it all has to be within the same family. So if we had a big drop-off between the dining hall and the town center, and then you moved over and it felt totally different, it would feel out of place. So that's why this looks the way it does. This is looking to where you're looking north here. This is from the office retail looking north at the two drive-throughs. This is the drive-through, this is the east drive-through. So again, notice all the materials and the detailing. This is the west drive-through. And I want to use this image here to make a point about, we've got another, in between these two drive-throughs, we have another outdoor space. And our whole vision is pedestrian friendly. And we don't want to just put, you know, areas on a plan and just call them out. We want our outdoor spaces to engage our residents, our tenants, and our visitors. We want them to be used. We want them to be activated. So we try to design them in a manner that they'll be used, okay? This is the look across the street from why do the drive-throughs have to look so nice? Because this is across the street, okay? This is the office retail. You've got retail on the first floor, and you've got offices above here. Behind these shutters, these are actually offices, okay? So it reads just like a retail building, but it's actually a two-story building with retail on the first floor and office above. We've got these two, I called it a faux portal, which I don't know if that really makes sense, but a fake portal to invite visitors to come through here. These are tall, freestanding masonry walls, but the idea here is, if you can imagine, this is like a door opening, and you're invited in between these two buildings to yet another outdoor space. Okay, this is in between the two buildings. This gives you a good perspective of the second floor. That's the office. Okay, this is going to be, I think this would be perfect for a single user, but it could also be multiple users on the office side. The retail, I don't think you're going to get a retailer to take the entire space, but for the office, you could. You could get someone to take the entire space. And this is, you know, a really interesting element that we think just adds to the space. You know, I call it a sky zebo, because it's a gazebo pulling your eye up to the sky. But again, this is our vision. You know, we believe that it's consistent with the comp plan and the GDP. We believe there's strong market demand for each component, that it's the appropriate scale for us to execute it. The 59 acres is the appropriate scale, so we don't piecemeal it, right? We're coming in to you tonight showing you a vision for the entire 59 acres. The infrastructure that's in place is adequate, and it's a thoughtful delivery of land uses, and part of that thoughtfulness is recognizing that the plan that everybody saw and perhaps fell in love with and felt that they were promised, it's no longer viable. Right? So how can we deliver something that's going to work for the city and work for us, and ultimately be that we can all point to and say, well done. So that's my thank you for the time. That's my presentation.
Great.
And I'm happy to take any questions that I can. And as I said, Nick and Danny and Tom are here too.
Great, and so any input, any thoughts, this is a great time to give the feedback. Alderman Rozak.
Well,
And then
Chris,
Alderman
I've got a lot of
Maroney's next.
You know, in general, I like the design. I like the look. definitely better than the first vision you guys showed us, showed me and I think Matt a couple months ago or whatever it was. I have got a few concerns. Well, let me start with the good stuff. I like the design, I like the look generally. I like the connectivity, which is something I've been begging Pabst Farms to do, that they just, for whatever reason, they just can't get it through their head on how to design a parking lot to make it connected, which is really easy. You put a sidewalk up the middle of it, but, other places do it. They obviously can't figure it out. But do you have concerns about, all this stuff looks great if you get people in, but there's still vacancies, and there have been vacancies until very recently in the Pabst Farms little strip mall there, and that's a Class A nice space with a huge anchor tenant, Pick and Save, and the number 1 or 2 Starbucks in the entire state right there. And, there's nothing there. Just recently, I think the last store finally got filled, which is the Mexican restaurant that we just approved a liquor license for. So does that concern you at all? And with Olympia going in, in other words, is this just a pipe dream to get us to change some zoning for you?
No, let me answer those in reverse. One, I don't think you need to change the zoning because I think we're in compliance.
Well, not the residential.
The residential is part of within the Pabst Farm GDP, there was a provision to allow for residential.
Jason, can you come up and address that?
That's just an ancillary kind of issue, right?
So your point is very well taken, and I think that part of the approach that we would bring as we own the property, we're going to own the development. At some point, we may sell components of it, but in terms of executing it and delivering it, the first occupants will be occupants who are tenants of ours.
Right.
And in terms of tenant selection, one of the challenges that a lot of retailers face is that because we're a private company, right? So we respond to the family's desires. If you're a public company, then you have to respond to all kinds of other interests that it makes it advantageous for you to fail. I don't know if that makes sense. Like if you need to get $35 a square foot for your rent, it's better to have the place empty at $35 a square foot than to get the right tenant in.
Oh, I've heard those things occurring in our city.
So I think that's the fundamental difference, is who is the owner and what is their approach. And our approach is to create success.
So let me ask another kind of opposite part of the question. Obviously, one of the buildings is going to be mostly or partially taken up by Nicholas and Associates, right?
About half of it.
Right. So out of the stuff you're going to build first, that you're going to know you're going to make money on, it's going to be the building you're going to go into. And then what's next? What are you going to build next?
Next would be the residential.
Residential, right.
And then probably, I would say, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I think the quick serves, there are demand for the quick serves.
Yeah.
And then the dining hall. I think that, you see this location and the demographic that you could bring in and people's appetite for cool dining environments, there's a huge opportunity here. There's another thing
I don't disagree with you.
Bob and I talk about this all the time, about where can you host a private event? There's not a lot of choices.
The community center.
So, yeah, we're very, you are right. I would say that you are 100% right, that you should go into any development like this with eyes wide open, but I think that this is truly a unique opportunity.
I don't disagree. I'd like to see something happen out there, but I do want an answer on the zoning, though. I think we have to change the zoning for the residential.
Yeah.
Right?
Good evening. I do have some comments. A lot of these slides I've been seeing for the very first time, just like you tonight. I was taking a lot of notes. I've been here a long time. I've seen Pabst Farms go through a lot of changes. It's got a very long history. We have the latest plan was approved over 10 years ago. I'll talk a little bit about process. I'm not going to have a lot of comments, but the underlying zoning out there is GC, general commercial. And the way a plan development works is you have the base zoning district, and then you have these uses on top of it. And a PD, a plan development overlay, can allow land use exemptions. The one that we have in place right now, today, I tried to get rid of it because it hasn't been built in 10 years, but you guys wanted to keep it on the books, which was a smart move because it had something to go off of. It did allow residential use. So that was an example of how the planned development allowed a different land use, residential, in the commercial zoning. Previous council members, I don't think any of you were on board at the last one, no, allowed residential use in the Paps Farms. And we created what was called a GDP, a General Development Plan. And in that, we talked about all the public exemption, or all the land use exemptions, like residential use, and then they talked about the public benefits. And we talked a little bit about, Chris talked about public benefits. Yes, there was these public plaza areas that were gonna be owned privately, but they were gonna be open for the public to use.
Hey, Jason, go back to the residential issue, though.
Right.
It allows residential, but at what density?
It allowed up to 150,000 square feet. I'm thinking at the time, it wasn't the corners in Brookfield, this was before that, it was the stuff in, Bayshore Town Center, where people were starting to build residential on top of non-residential uses. So they didn't give a unit count, but if you think an apartment is, I don't know, 1,000 square feet, maybe a little less, 150,000 square feet, 150 to 200 units.
In just that area or the entire Paps Farms area?
In the town center area, which is just, not just the 59 acres, but the other side of the Fleet Farm as well.
Right, but they don't own that parcel.
They don't own that, so.
So it's gonna be reduced as a percentage.
So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to redo a general development plan, and we're gonna have to have a partnership with Paps Farms, because now we have two owners. We have Wingspan on one, and we have Paps Farms on the other, and we're gonna have to all kind of come together. This is very early conceptual meetings here, but this does not match the general development plan. I think the spirit does, is what Chris has been saying, because the uses of commercial and residential. And then the third component, I'm really good with actually, you know, the commercial, I wrote down the restaurants, the retail drive-through, the office retail. That's all great. Even the residential, I think the spirit is there before. I can get behind that. It's the innovation and technology hub that will have to get a definition, you know, because I don't want to see that get out of hand. I don't want that to become a big manufacturing area. I want that to be something that we're all comfortable with. So that'll have to be really written up. Because, you know, there has been a shift. Commercial zoning isn't just retail, cash and carry. It's office. It's all sorts of uses are allowed in the GC General Commercial Zoning District. And I can have that in a report to you to get you to understand what that all allows. But I just made that note. Commercial use is not just retail. It is the shift office and everything else. The vision out there, I wrote down a note, was really more retail orientated with restaurants and other services, but with mid-box and small box retailers in this area, kind of wrapped around. And I'll certainly share the prior plan that was approved to show you what that was. But from a process standpoint, I think tonight is just getting feedback, and then if you're comfortable with this, we'd take the next step and we'd start working with Paps Farms and Wingspan and bring back a general development plan and a PD ordinance that would then have to be approved by you with an amendment because this does not match really the buildings that was in the general development plan. So I think the uses are there as long as we can get a handle on that, the technology hub, but it's the layout that does not match, and you know, we'll have to get a plan in place. Does that?
I think Alderman Maroney was next.
Yeah, my comment was just kind of going off what Matt was saying earlier, and you went into detail about that, but it's the demand, the market demand for the retail units. Are we going to be able to fill these spaces was my concern in the Wingspan development.
Yes, I believe.
Kind of went over that.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
so.
And you really, in terms of users, you've got, you know, these two quick serves, that's 2 users, right? The upscale dining halls, this could be a single user in one building, or it could be multiple users in either building. In terms of traditional retail, this over here is gonna be more, you know, this could be the most challenging, but there's certainly users that we know of that would wanna be in here. And then the retail, you know, in terms of pure retail, this is more pure retail. So it's not that, there's a lot of space, but it's not, no portion of it is undesirable, okay? It's not like you're in the elbow of a big strip center and no one's gonna see you. You have no visibility from the road, so to speak.
Alderman Altman-Cloth.
2 things, a couple things already got answered between Jason and Matt. My first thought, when you were talking about the offices, just how many offices are sitting vacant? You know, like off of 94 in Barker, the Blue Yonder building. They recently pulled all of their people out of there. They're working from home. You know, so obviously a concern about, again, just things not sitting empty. Actually, maybe 3 concerns. The technology and hub, I feel like that's kind of a fancy way to sell us on some potentially warehouses or not necessarily a distribution center, but you know, maybe some more warehousey type buildings. And then the other thing, you know, I'm thinking of a couple constituents of mine that, you know, are always in contact with me and kind of letting me know their thoughts on things. And, you know, if they're watching this presentation or they see the write-up on it and, you know, the Oconomowoc Enterprise tomorrow or whatever, is the 2 big pushbacks are, oh, once again, there goes our small town feel. You know, when you said that showpiece off of 94, they're gonna look at that, I think, just more as an eyesore. And then more housing, more apartments that are unaffordable.
That's not their problem.
No, I mean, it's not, but, you know, that is something we hear a lot about, you know, in our community is, you know, how many of our kids are being raised here but then can't afford to live here. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, you know, what I'm preparing to hear from constituents, that's all.
I think there was a hand, Alderman Schulpepper.
I guess I was kind of like happy that it wasn't just residential, that we were kind of providing a more diversified plan. So I like that piece of it. What are we looking like in terms of employment and jobs in some of that technology innovation hub? I mean, what does that look like in terms of jobs that are, you know, available?
Yeah, we can get you statistics on job generation, typical job generation by square foot. That's a relatively, I think, available metric, but we didn't do any of those calculations per se.
Well, one of my concerns is like how we've grown as a community is we've kind of turned into this like, or I don't think we've turned into it, but like bedroom community piece where we don't necessarily have as many working opportunities. So I think it'd be also interesting as, you know, is this another opportunity? We're going to be bringing more jobs to the community, more, you know, and even if people aren't necessarily living here and working here, people will be commuting here using our services. So that's at least something that I'm interested in that I like about this. I guess I would take the other piece from Alderman Altman-Cloth in terms of like the eyesore off the interstate. I think right now it really looks like an eyesore having this massive sign with one store on this, you know, like, and this huge, it's just like, so I think this, you know, I think about like Brookfield when I was a younger kid driving towards Milwaukee and some of the larger commercial buildings that are glass and, you know, back then how cool that looked and how it kind of brought a more of a thriving feel. So yeah, I think we could have different views on the design, but it does add like more of a noticeable piece to the community. I like that piece. I guess like going back to Alderman Rosick's point in terms of, you said first you thought, you know, it would be the headquarters that would go in, and then the residential would probably be next. Like, what do you see this timeline looking like? Because my concern would be maybe that's all we end up with then is just like the headquarters building and the residential, maybe a couple of the fast food joints, and then it's another kind of unfulfilled promise out in that area. And then it's your property. I mean, and we get that too. So, but,
No, I
you know.
understand.
And I would echo to his point, I think all the council members feel that way because of experiences in the past.
And I sense that, and I have heard that, and, you know, we can, you know, I'll share an anecdotal story is that we have a friendly competitor that we showed the renderings of the buildings the technology and innovation. And he said, "You're not going to show that to the city, are you? If you show that to them, they're going to want you to build that." And we said, "We want to build it, right? This is what we want to do. This is not," again, to my earlier point, we respond to the wishes of the family. And Nick Papanikolaou is going to want this to look awesome and to be completed. In terms of a definitive timeline on each individual component, I can't give that to you here today, but I can tell you that this building up here would start first. This is the one that Nicholas is in. I think that we would probably start this one second on spec, only for appearance's sake, because in the back here, to your question about logistics or warehousing, you know, the buildings are not designed with just a slew of truck bays in the back, because that's not our, if that was our intention, you know, we would have to show a bunch of truck bays, but that's not our intention, so we don't have to show them, right? Because our user's not gonna need them. But regardless, even though we think this is the highest level of execution for this product type, this looks a heck of a lot better. So we would start both of those.
And I would make the comment when Bob Duffy and I went to Illinois to their, one of their headquarters in Illinois, it's in a park like this, and you saw a lot of really boring looking buildings, and then we saw yours. And it actually popped, it looked nice. So I'm cautiously optimistic that you're gonna do what you say you're gonna do. But I think there's skepticism because of history here. When I look at buildings of this size and the architecture of what you're doing, I think it's really, really impressive. You did mention to me that when this was going to look at it, that you were told not to show it to council.
Yes.
And what you just said was exactly what you repeated to Bob and I when we were there. So I have a level of comfort and trust that you're gonna try to do it to this level. But I also want you to be prepared that we're gonna hold you accountable for that, as we have done in PAPS, as we've done, in Olympia. Not PAPS.
Try.
But I just want to make sure that those things are laid out there. But when you saw we walked into their meeting room and we saw that building, it was really, really nice.
Thank you.
Then saw another building that was retrofitted and had it was extremely well done. So you continued to say through this whole thing of the quality and the architecture and all of that. I believe you, but there's a little piece in me that says we better get it.
You will get it, sir.
Okay.
Well, and Mayor, and I mean, and we also have recent history with that in our downtown, where we have a gaping hole right now, where it was really promised this amazing looking building with these great materials, and obviously that's not your fault, but so there's, you know, don't be disappointed if you hear people in the community be like, you know, you're pulling the wool over our eyes, and, you know, we're just going along with another thing. So hopefully we'll have a different experience.
Well, and I'm impressed with what you did here, because like I said, I haven't seen these. And you took some of the suggestions Bob and I made and actually made them even better. So I'm actually really pleasantly, not surprised, I'm very pleased with what I'm seeing now. And that was only a few weeks ago that we were there. Alderman Rozak?
Yeah, a couple other things, Chris, if you don't mind.
Sure.
That Chaz said, I think it was Chaz that said what I said, which is the fear of those things being filled. And you were honest, at least, of what's going to be the money makers, the innovation center and the residential. I'm concerned about the overall whiteness of it. We have other white apartment buildings up the road that the people, my constituents that live, and that's my district that live there, absolutely detest those white buildings. They're raised up, they're white, they're big. I would encourage a softening of the white to be more in conformance. And I said this to the folks too across the way that are interested in other stuff too, that I think our goal with the look, the Innovation Center probably not as important because it's off to the side, but at least some of these front buildings to have a coordinated feel with the rest of the Paps Farms area. Whether that's matching color tones, I mean, not every single roof needs to be red. You know, I think we've kind of moved past that, but you know, Journey 21 actually fits in really good as far as the look there. Some of the other buildings have, even the Fleet Farm fits in really well. I don't know how wedded you guys are to these colors or these are just general, but a bunch of white apartment buildings are gonna be, you know, people are gonna be PO'd if we get another bunch of white apartment buildings and don't have a softer feel to them.
Yeah,
So-
I think I can say that, we're very excited about the architecture on the commercial side in terms of working with you or staff or whoever on the color palette for the apartments. We'd be very happy to accommodate you there. We would just be sensitive to trying to effectively execute the architectural design
Right.
with a color scheme that fits.
Okay, so, right,
know-
the code I'm hearing from you is that we like the colors the way they are, and that's fine. And that's okay, but it doesn't really, it doesn't create a cohesive area. So if the color schemes in general don't have some matching tones and color feels, it just doesn't fit. And that's what happened with Hackney House. Hackney House got built in a
I guess I'm
different fit,
hearing something different, so correct me if I'm wrong, Matt. I'm hearing that they like what they've put together, they just want to make sure it all aligns and that they're willing to work with us on the residential stuff, on colors, or a softening or something like that. I heard something different.
mean, you
So
can
I need you to make the clarification for us, Chris, because
Yes.
I think it's an important point, and what we don't want to do is have a community uproar because of
No,
some
yeah.
feelings about another
Yeah,
development.
and I appreciate that. So the color scheming on the apartments, if that's a concern, if the community has expressed a concern about, white, too much white on the apartments, that we're more than happy to look at. As it relates to the other components, like especially the retail and the office, like that building executed outside of white is not gonna come off the same. The white is very sharp, and especially in our climate, you could end up with something that looks a little dingy, right? And we want it to be super crisp.
Well,
Okay?
I'm just telling.
When you go, yeah, and so, but I want to be sensitive to your question. So if you go these, the quick serves, let me go back to them. So they include a lot of different colors. They're not the whites. You've got, the stone is a white, but we can go with a different tone on the stone. This is like a old common brick look here.
What I guess the point I'm getting to is I'd like to create a project out there that has some consistency with the rest of the Paps Farms area. It doesn't have to be perfectly consistent, I think we've moved beyond that, but at least some, similarity, some similar type of stone feels. I love actually the white and gray. If it was up to me, I would have done the whole thing like that, but it's not like that. So maybe we're just beyond the point where we can have any consistency in the development out there, because we have kind of moved beyond that. But I would just encourage you to work on it and think about it. Breaking up the white buildings for sure, the taller white buildings, is going to be a huge thing for that area.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we will work on that.
Okay, you got
Okay.
that, good. Jason, you heard that? Okay, thank you.
Well, we need to get that to the Architectural Commission.
Well, any other questions or comments?
Can I make one?
Yeah, please do.
I just want to point out that I think our buildings look better than the back of Fleet Farm.
Oh, I 100% agree with you there, 100%.
Just
I think they look, no,
respectfully.
personally, I think they look beautiful.
Oh,
I think
all
they're
right.
gorgeous. I was actually just in a community outside of St. Louis recently, and it was beautiful, and I thought, wow, I would love to live here, and a lot of your project reminds me of that community. I forgot the name of the suburb, but
Clayton.
I'm just thinking of what my constituents who voted me into this seat are going to say. So it's not always what I want, unfortunately. I have to consider them as well.
Other questions, comments? Well, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much for
showing
the
us.
time.
And
So-
I think these, we will send this slide deck to all the aldermen.
Slide
so they
deck to all
have
the
that.
aldermen. I'll wait for comments to be filtered through Mr. Fry, and then I'll respond back. And again, I'll make myself available at your convenience to meet for a coffee or whatever.
Okay. Council, are you good if we filter them through Mark like we've done in the past? And then everybody gets the information one time? So Mark's looking for some more work. Thank you for coming.
Thank you all very much.
You bet.
Really appreciate it.
I think we should go forward and do it. Yeah, well, if we go over, we go over. Jason, about how long do you think streets will take?
I can do 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, Okay. So council, are you okay if we go a little bit past 7:30? I just want to try to stay, it was important, we went through all, we have great discussions. So let's take off, Jason, let's go for it. Our next item is the street condition update and future paving program planning. We're bringing this forward as we get again into our operating budget when you get your booklets, because we've heard loud and clear on our goals to try to improve our infrastructure and roads. So it's all yours.
All right,
Mr. Herzog.
Thank you, Mayor. As impressive as their renderings were, I don't know if anybody noticed how fresh and nice their parking lots looked. But just going through this with a pavement aspect and a look for this, I'd like to just kind of take a few minutes just to generally talk about where our program has been as we recently had it rated. So real quick, I'd like to go and update through our condition ratings. That's done through our PACER system, a little look at our future plan and some financial option, and then also some feedback possibly on Concord Road work. So just an update and refresh. If this isn't totally familiar, if I'm speaking of something that you're not familiar with, please let me know. But every other year, every odd year, we're responsible for rating our pavements and submitting it back to the state. We do that with a PACER rating scale, a scale 1 to 10, and 10 being the newest, and most frequently your replaced roads that come in fresh. This is a graphic and a map that we have generated. Basically, the entire city that you're looking at here is labeled out with the coloring code system. Blues are good, not so good as you darken into the reds. So you can kind of see some of the new streets that have come into the city and some that have been throughout, either replaced through our programs. Some of the telling signs is, if you can allow this, it's not exact science, but the overall average of the city tends to want to be a 7.2 in that 10 scale. So again, this is just the overall rating here. Here is some quick graphs of our historical and trends of what the city has done. You can kind of see on the graph on the left there, those are our miles that the city has been built out at. So going back, dating to 2011, you're looking at a city that was made up of 82 miles. And over these last 12, 13 years, we've grown to 94. So some of the big thing here, we're starting to see a little stronger trend with the increased numbers coming in the last 4 to 8 years. And then on the right, what we're looking at is the rating, the overall rating of the city. Had a kind of a declining trend here up until about 2017, going into the 2018 year, started improving, and then you see a big spike in there. Kind of is a contribution to the funding that was added to the program and the amount of streets that have been added to the city in general, and obviously they are coming in with a very high rating. So those are some of the trends there. Just looking directly at this last cycle of our ratings, I grouped them together just to try to keep these pretty simplistic. The blues are good, the reds are not so good, and a lot of the pavements inside the city, which is very typical, reside in that 5 to 8 range. That's very common. It just happens to be where you are in your city growth. The next slide is something that kind of shares the same information, but in the last 4 ratings. Going back a few cycles, you can kind of see some of the more severe streets and the conditions as they have been slowly declining. And I don't know that we'll get rid of them always, because you'll have new streets coming down into that area. The idea is to try to reduce these and control them. The ones in the orange are your more priority ones as well. They are at a manageable condition right now, but the more concerning piece is that you see the ones in yellow. The ones in yellow are the ones that are more of your forecasted ones, as that number is increasing. So basically what you're seeing is a lot of the fresh new pavements coming in are now moving into your planning sessions. And that group most commonly is always looked at from your pavements inside of 6 rate. So 6 and below are the ones that you start to plan for and project out to schedule for work. I tried to narrow this down and give you an idea graphically. These are the areas and pavement sections that fall in that 6 and below. Those are types of roads and sections that you want to start to plan for and to start to investigate, as they will be in need of work in the next 10 to 15 years. Some are higher and inside your 5 years. So all of that is included in there. If you sum all these up, you're looking at 37 miles of pavement that will need work from now until the next 15 years. So that's kind of how you group some of this stuff together to manage this and to plan and to build out your budget. Currently, right now, we have $2 million collectively, $1 million from our levy, and we are borrowing another $1 million, and that program was doubled some years ago, which you saw the impact to our pavement section. Right now, what we're seeing on a replacement cost basis and rate, due to some inflation the last couple of years and the demand in the industry, as we are not the only ones that are investing into the pavement, it increases some of the price and the economics of that, and plus our growth in the city, as we've been growing about 1 to 2 miles, 2 miles per year the last 4 to 6 years. So we're starting to see pavement costs rise to about $1 million per mile, and that's a replacement thing. So on a $2 million budget, we run out some simple math, we're looking at replacing, every 47 years. Again, asphalt is designed to pretty much give you about 30, maybe 35 years. I also back-checked this with also the other demand, which is just, what do you have coming up in the next 10 to 15 years? So again, if we look at 37 miles of pavement that needs work, if we're replacing 3 miles per year, you're looking at about 12.3 years, which would handle that demand there. And the reason I picked 3 miles per year, looking at a future and going into the paving program, I would propose that the city looks to invest an additional $1 million per year, starting in 2025 possibly. What that does, it handles a few different things. One, it allows you to control the replacement cycle of your pavements and make it into more of a manageable replacement cycle of around 30 to 35 years. That's consistent with a lot of the pavement that the life of asphalt will just give you. If it is less than that financially, obviously you can't replace your pavements as quickly and will end up with a higher condition. It also allows you to handle what I would call like a slug of new construction that came in the housing industry from the late 90s to the early 2000s there. We had a large amount of pavement that got installed. Well, that will be coming up in the next 10 years to be replaced. So the idea is to fund this properly, to make this more uniform, and to allow the city to handle the sizable amount of work that is really coming down the pipeline. It also allows you to continue your pavement condition during that process. I kind of tried to lay out a plan as if we were to increase our budget on a $3 million basis and provide like a 10-year paving program. I can do that pretty easily with 5 years. Extending that out beyond 5 years, I can simply just tell you kind of some locations, and then depending on how those locations deteriorate would drive some of the priority. Some of this is also driven by some of the utilities that need to happen as well, along with some of these projects. So what I'd like to do is allow our finance director to kind of help you understand some of the funding options on that $1 million.
Thanks, Jason. So, just for a second. So really what we did is we had Ellers put together what it would look like, since we already talked about a transportation utility, and the idea is that that's probably not going to happen. It really leaves us back to our debt plan that we had talked about before over the last few years. So we had Ellers put that together, and if I could find it, here it is.
Could I ask something, Mayor, quick, though? What happened with the shared revenue piece of this, the additional dollars there?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to go through all of that
Okay.
in the workshop, because they're really talking about beyond 2024. And so all of that will come together. This is just kind of an introductory to give you an idea of what Public Works is recommending, and maybe some different ways to finance it.
Yeah.
No decisions, but it's to get you guys thinking before we get our.
So what we had Ellers do was put together, right now, what we know what our 2023 borrowing is going to be is in that first column there, and that is for TID 7, Oconomowoc Parkway Sewer, and then the streets for 2024. Now, the first two, the TID 7 and the Parkway Sewer, that's not paid for with levy. Those are different funds that pay the debt service on that. So then what we had them do is put together 10 years of borrowing so that Jason's plan is funded. So you can see in 25 and moving on to 2034, we've got that additional $2 million in there. And then I had them add in $100,000 each year just because of increasing prices, and also because of what we had talked about the last couple of years, that we have $1 million in our levy right now. But should the shared revenue gets used up, or, I'm thinking about the future here. So if you need to hire police officers later or something like that, you may need to reduce the levy portion of the streets to accommodate that. So between the increased costs and the idea that you may want to eventually start reducing that, what's in the levy, that's how come I had them increase this. Now, this is just showing you what this could look like if it is completely financed here. So this is the borrowing over 10 years. And then when you take a look at what's that tax levy effect, the first thing you want to look at is what our current debt service is. So for 2023, the tax levy for debt is 2.2 million, a little over 2.2 million. It's on the top line of the chart. The mill rate for that is 74 cents per thousand, or for a $400,000 home, we are currently paying $295 towards debt service on your, the full amount that you pay of your taxes, $295 that goes to debt service. So how would that change if we went into this borrowing plan? Well, with 2023 borrowing that we're already doing, that's it really figured into the next year. But you see that changes at about 2 cents. And so the thing that we tried to do with this is take a look at what is our current debt schedules that we have right now and kind of filter these in so it keeps as stable as it can. And so this continuously goes throughout the years, and you can see that it does peak a little bit in 2027, 28, 29, and then starts to go down. And the main reasons for that is the debt service that we currently have on the books is going to be falling off in those years. So it's a pretty stable tax rate for debt moving forward. And then should you decide to do this, then we'll bring Phil in from Ellers and he can put the whole picture together for you. But this is just to give you an idea of what that would look like. Okay?
Alderman Rozak?
Yeah, well, I kind of raised.
I'm sorry, I mean Alderman Ellis,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
that's okay. But
I looked at
was
Ellis
thinking,
and I said Rozak, because that's usually what I say. Alderman Ellis. Sorry.
How can you guarantee these numbers going into 31, 32, 35, 37, 38?
What I don't have in here for you is the actual debt schedules. So basically, when we take out the debt, it gets a 10-year debt schedule for each of the new years. Each new year that we borrow, there's a 10-year debt schedule. And that's set, so we know what those payments are gonna be.
Because going from 30 to 31, that's huge. You dropped 18 cents there.
Yeah, and that's because the
thing.
community center gets paid off. And we're not making that payment anymore.
So my next question is, why can't we pay the community center right now?
How did I know you were gonna ask me that?
Alderman Mulder, I'm cutting off Alderman Ellis on purpose.
No, I want to know.
Well, I mean, we've been through this several times. We're on a bond schedule. So
Okay.
the investors are expecting to get their money at a certain time.
All right.
Alderman Mulder?
Penalties, early payment penalties on that.
So help me understand, because our net debt is going from 2.2 now up to a max of 3.9. So,
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Debt service, not total debt.
right.
Okay.
So why is the service going up by 50%, but only, the tax rate only by a small amount?
You know, when they put these tables together, they do take into account that our equalized value will change, our city will grow, the projections that we've got out there.
That's all baked.
And that's really, it's all factored into that.
Yep. Other questions?
I did.
Yeah, Alderman Rozak.
Oh, thank you. On the last, if you go back a sheet ago, can you go back a prior sheet there, or prior slide? Yeah, so we agreed this year, we were still doing $1 million in levy, and we agreed this year to do 1.5. Why are we not just starting the extra spending in 2024? Why not get going on this program quicker?
That 1.5 is actually for 2024 projects.
Oh, okay, okay. So that
And,
should be
I mean, this is laying this out like this so it can show you it in a nice, steady fashion. But depending on the economics, what's going on, a lot of times we borrow 2 years for 2 years instead of just 1 year at a time. Or we skip a year and borrow 2 years the next year.
the rates are better.
Yeah, when the rates are better or what's going on. So this is, you know, laid out in a straight line. This is what this would cost. But how the execution happens could be a little bit different than this.
I like the idea of spending the more money on the roads. I think that's important for a community that's portions are aging, but also growing at the same time and needing to stay ahead, because previous councils prior to me being on just stopped spending money on roads. I mean, they went to like $1 million or $500,000 a year or whatever the crazy
Yeah,
thing
it was
they did.
below that.
They just stopped spending money on roads. You know, basically they spent enough to patch potholes, and that was insane. So I agree, but I also like Chaz's comment too. I mean, I think part of this should also be, I don't think we should spend every penny of the shared revenue. We should, instead of taking more debt, plug some of that in towards, you know. the road.
And that's absolutely things we'll talk about during the
Yeah.
budget session.
You'll
This is
have-
just if we did it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fair.
You'll have some slides in summary on the 19th, when she goes through the budget booklets. But we wanted to give you an idea of kind of where things are right now. And really, the take-home message is the recommendation from Public Works is $3 million per year, which is significantly more than historically. Alderman Shellpepper.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great investment, and I'm totally in favor of it. And I'm in favor of the 1.5 for Concord, which is, I believe, what the recommendation is right now. But that increased shared revenue, like, we should be maximizing that out on this, and not, like I've kind of said, I know some people don't like the word I've said, but expanding government. We shouldn't be expanding government with the 400, extra K that we're getting. It should be taking care of the people who live here right now by fixing their roads. So that's the primer that I have for that discussion in a couple weeks.
Cool.
Great.
That's all. Don't we-
Jason, you have a little more for us?
Just a little bit, as I want to address Concord
Okay.
Road.
Cool.
Any other questions about kind of our pavement or anything like that? Because one of the big pieces, and this isn't completely normal, but I thought with the size of this project, I wanted to explain kind of what we are doing and what I would recommend, and then there's a small option that if any interest of that. So Concord Road, basically, looking to replace Concord Road from Second Street down south to Rivendell. It's about a little over a mile, about $1.5 million, and this is simply to remove and replace what everybody sees out there right now. A little bit of work to some curb and gutter, but there's a big need to replace some of the water and utilities in the northern, or I'd say about half this section, really. So that's what's driving this also, and then a new pavement on top of that. So again, there's from Second Street south, looking to replace that section. There is a piece kind of in the middle here that I guess there's some opportunity as the northern piece north of the bridge, as it comes into Second Street, is a more what I would call urbanized section, curb and gutter, sidewalks, driveways. That has already been improved. The section south of the bridge is not. That is your more standard rural section, but I want to just acknowledge the fact that this is still more of a city setting along this area with houses a little more tighter. So I just want to share some of this with you. So there is an option to reconstruct this area by adding curb and gutter. And if we add curb and gutter, storm sewer would be a big component of that, as now you are simply collecting all of the water. So just to share some imageries, this is north of the bridge on Concord, looking to the south. So here's just the urbanized section that I'm talking about, curb and gutter, asphalt, and then the sidewalk in there. And this is on the bridge, looking to the south, as not only do you notice the deterioration, but there is no curb and gutter, and it's kind of a free, open transition to your pathway system.
Would you put it on both sides or just the one?
Well, right
Because
now,
there is a
right now, I'm
sidewalk
just
on that side.
continuing the sidewalk system the way it is, with one on one side.
Right.
And that would allow that to connect the subdivision and still get that in and utilize the trail that was put in place.
So the sidewalk would only be in District 4?
Say it again.
No.
Sorry. I missed that one.
Jason, before you keep going, Mayor, can I ask something quick?
Sure.
Why are we only going from Second Street, from Wisconsin Avenue to Second Street on Concord is still terrible. I mean, it's in terrible condition. So I guess.
Slightly better, but yes.
So that seems like it's, like we're not, that concerns me. And then, nothing, and I don't think we've ever had like a full discussion about this, and hopefully we can have more of it. But like, in terms of pedestrian or bicycle access, at least on one side of the street, stretching all the way to the bridge for all the people who live. I know in some of those newer orchard subdivisions, if you come out onto Concord, there's some sidewalk there. But once you get further, would that be, I'm like totally, is that south? Further south, I mean, there's all those neighborhoods right now. I go knock on doors, I talk to those people. They're like scared to go on Concord. They're going to get hit.
Yeah, I'm trying to share, and this area, maybe if I back up, make sure I'm talking about the right areas that you're talking.
I'm talking further south than this.
He's talking about at Wisconsin Avenue.
I'm going towards the river. Not this river, but the other river further.
I'm getting there.
Okay, got it, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, that's what I mean. I don't know if we have easements there, and I don't know
Yeah,
if it's even a realistic proposition. It might not be.
So there's this option of coming from the river south and connecting with Allen. And I know you might be talking further south.
Right, I'm talking about all the way down to Grandview Avenue,
Right.
All the people who live, in those neighborhoods there.
Those neighborhoods don't have sidewalks anyway. Some of those neighborhoods.
So the sidewalk right now.
Right, but Concord is a busy road, and that's like the connection to our city,
So
like
we have a
to
trail
having
down
a
Apple.
connected pedestrian bicycle.
So we
So
have
I
a
don't know
trail.
if it's not realistic. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not.
I think they're all really good questions that we got to jump into when we get into the
Yeah,
budget, because I
right.
think those are all really good points. I'm going to try to move you along a little bit more because we're running a little bit late.
I'm good.
Okay.
But I think
Yeah, I just need
the other
to know
question,
because it's a sizable scope
yeah.
difference if we were to do any improvement that you're suggesting south of the bridge.
Well, and we can have
It's-
all those discussions, it sounds like in the
Absolutely.
future.
That-
We're in a week,
Yeah.
This
couple
part you're
weeks.
asking about right now, are you looking for guidance on whether
A
we
little
should do
bit.
this? What
It's a
is that-
major design change.
Is that your recommendation?
I think it would provide safety in that area. I think it is really expensive, though, to go further south than Allen Road. Because yes, you are up against some very restrictive components with right-of-way, with utilities.
There's sidewalk on Allen too, isn't there now? Is there
There
a
is,
sidewalk
yeah.
or a path?
Yeah.
Allen there is,
those-
down to Epler.
So you're
I used
saying-
to live in Grandview, so you can, we didn't have sidewalks. There are some sidewalks piecemealed back there, but you can walk back through and connect now to Allen. And then, so if you at least got that to Allen, that would create connectivity for people to walk. They can't walk straight up Concord, that's true.
So you're saying
But
the
there's a lot of
yellow
private
part,
property along
I'm confused. Your recommendation is that we do the yellow part. And that's the 1.25 million
If you
plus the
wanted
curb
to
and
spend
gutter.
another $1.5 million,
Million and a half. But anything south of that would be really difficult, you're saying?
I think you're looking at another $1.5 to $2 million to put a trail, to put up
I think we'd
sidewalk.
be foolish to not fully understand what we're talking about there. That area is a mess. The river's right there. We've got gunk going into the river, running off.
What might be helpful is if we take this road and we look at all those different options, and then along the side, it costs roughly this much for this, roughly this much for this.
Yeah,
That way
yes,
you can put a
yes.
dollar value to the sections, and then if you have time, ride your bicycle on that. It's pretty bad.
It is
Nice
it's very
hill there.
tight in there.
I like that.
And I'm just saying, so for right now, I mean, just for simple math here, reconstructing that area from the bridge to Allen, you're looking at $1.5 million. And you can double that if you want to get down to Grandview.
So it sounds like Concord needs to be its own committee of the whole.
Well, I think just to have you guys get the perspective, take a look at the roads, because this frankly, I'm getting a strong sense, and I agree, is that we have to put more money in this infrastructure. And this is going to be a long part of our discussion, so when we get into the operating budget, we have to look at the different places where we could potentially help things, at least in 2024. I'm going to have you keep going, please.
So those are just some images, as you come around the curve on Concord heading south, the trail is there. Again, I mean, it's just adjacent to the road, so you do have some separation there, but there is no physical barrier to really provide some safety and that, if we wanted to improve anything, this would be the area I would suggest to improve down to Allen Road. There is a trail that goes, the trail continues to Epler. We could look at that, but we are looking at some major physical obstacles to really trudge through. So, and that's why I was just kind of exposing this. This is a slightly different project altogether, and I just want to be clear with, everybody's expectations before we do anything. So yeah, altogether, holistically, in the whole paving program, I would propose to move the funding to a 3-year per year funding mechanism, replace Concord Road at 1.5, and look to see if there's interest in spending, double that to improve the area south of the river. We wanted to go further south, we double that.
Final question from me anyway. Does adding the curb and gutter prolong the life of the road that we're putting down there because it's better contained, or does that not have any impact?
Actually, I would say it's worse, in my experience. Rural sections do better because they have good drainage, usually. If you don't have a good ditch line, it doesn't matter what you put on the side. But yeah, you got to get the water out of there.
Well, thank you very much. Any last questions? Are we good? Thank you very much. Councilman, we have one other item on the Class B liquor licenses. We can postpone that to another meeting, or we can address it now. My recommendation would be to postpone it until we have time to really focus on, and then take a 3-minute break, and then we'll start council meeting. Does that sound good?
Motion to close.
Can I have I need a motion to
adjourn.
postpone the,
Second.
postpone item,
Item
postpone the item 2D.
2D.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. We'll take a 3-minute break. Did I do that right or not?
30 minutes?
The Common Council meeting for Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. Has appropriate meeting notification been made?
Yes, Your Honor, it has.
If everyone would please rise for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Here.
Alderman Ellis.
Here.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Here.
Alderman Mulder.
Here.
Alderman Shellpepper.
Here.
Alderman Maroney.
Here.
Alderman Douglas.
Here.
Alderman Rozak.
Here.
Welcome, everybody. I'd like to entertain a motion for approval of minutes for August 15th, 2023.
Rozak, so moved.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Opposed? On to comments and suggestions from citizens. I do have one blue card here. So, Mr. Galbraith, if you'd please come up to the podium. Bertus Galbraith, please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes to share your viewpoints and feedback, or feed us some information. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bertus Galbraith. I reside at 318 East Oak Street here in Oconomowoc. And tonight I want to address the council on the services the accurate appraisal has been doing for the city, and more importantly, the citizens of this community. Accurate Appraisals was awarded the contract for the assessments for the years of 2021 through 2025. And their contract states that they'll perform a market revaluation every year during that contract. I was selected and appointed by the mayor in June of 2022 as one of the commissioners for the board of review, and I've been doing it for the last 2 years. While I've been doing this, many citizens have stated that they've had a lot of problems with communicating with accurate appraisals and being able to ask any questions that they had about their assessments. Accurate appraisals they are presumed to be correct on everything that they say, so you would think that they would try to appease the community in letting them know how they get those numbers. I'm not, they stated they made numerous phone calls, trying to contact, leaving messages to have them call them back. Nobody ever returned their phone calls. I don't think that, every taxpayer states everything exactly correct, but a lot of these people complain about the same things over and over the course of the last 2 years that I've been there. So the contract between the city and Accurate Appraisals states in paragraph 17, Accurate will implement a public education plan to build understanding of the assessment process with taxpayers and the client. The client and Accurate shall work to maintain good public relations throughout the assessment program. I believe that Accurate's not been fulfilling these contractual obligations through their process, and I could go so far as to state that there may be a breach of this contract. From what I've witnessed throughout the community, many citizens are not aware of how the system works and needs to be educated better. Though I do not believe that assessing properties every year is the best way to do business, it is one of the methods that we decided to use to pay all the city's bills equitably. And every taxpayer, including myself, will tell you they hate to pay taxes. But we need to ensure everyone that they're getting their properties assessed fairly so they pay their fair share of the operating expenses of the city. As the council and the city staff, I'd like you to take this into consideration in 2025 when you look to renew this contract or obtain a new contract with a different assessor. Thank you.
Bertus, thank you very much for your service to the community and also for the update to the council. A little bit off me being rogue here a little bit, I do want you to be aware of that we are investigating that group right now. We came back from the League of Municipalities meeting, the executive workshop, and had a lot of different stories. So you coming here further supports that, and we appreciate that work that you've done. And for the council and the community, it has to be fair. And so they have to follow the agreement that we've placed in their hands as well. But it's something that we are working on now and that we are aware of, and we want to make sure that it's fair. So thank you for bringing that to the council as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from anybody in the community? All right, well, let's move on to no consent agenda items. So we'll move on to committee reports. Protection and Welfare, consider act on resolution 23-R3093, granting new 2023-2024 Class B intoxicating liquor fermented malt beverage license to El Jimador LLC. Diane?
Thank you, Mayor. We received an application for a new license for, as Mayor said, El Jimador LLC, and they will be operating in what is the former TID 3. It's over in Pabst Farms area, and they are applying for one of the 8 Pabst Farms special legislation capital improvement area liquor licenses. So they do meet all Chapter 12 licensing requirements and state statutes. Pabst Farms has sent an email agreeing that they would release that license on the condition that council does approve or grant that license to El Jimador. And so what we would do is what we've been doing in the past to protect both Pabst interest and, of course, the new licensee, is that they are not ready to open yet. They do not have final occupancy. They are in the process of it. They are getting close. So I would be asking and recommending that council approve it conditionally until October 31st to allow the licensee to finish the few pieces yet of, we'll call it the interior construction, and then get occupancy from the building inspector. And that way, as soon as they receive occupancy, I can issue them that license, and they can open those doors.
Any comments or questions for Ms. Conan? Alderman Maroney?
When is that going to take place? I know the 31st is going to be the actual date, but when would the acceptance of that be?
Do you mean when will they actually get the license from me?
Correct.
So if, once council grants it, that means you've approved it, but it's not considered their license until I actually issue it to them. So physically give it to them and get the payment for that license. As soon as the building inspector does his final inspection, he will notify me that he has given them final occupancy, which means they can open their doors. They are shooting for a target date of September 16th, but they still have a state inspection to go through, which the state has not given them the scheduled date yet to come through, and they still have some work to be done. And I can't give you a date specific, but that's why I'm recommending till October 31st, because that gives the licensee and the inspections plenty of time to get that done. And as we've done in the past, which I failed to state, is that if by October 31st he doesn't have occupancy and everything isn't ready, he then has to come, the licensee has to come back to council and request that license again. Again, it's protecting everybody's interests on that license.
I'd like to entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the license with the condition that.
Sorry.
Go
ahead,
with the
Matt.
condition for October 31st, 2023, that they have occupancy by that date.
Second.
Any further questions or comments?
Burgess.
Call roll.
Alderman Altman-Cloth?
Aye.
Alderman Ellis?
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Alderman Mulder?
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper?
Aye.
Alderman Maroney?
Aye.
Alderman Douglas?
Aye.
Alderman Rozak?
Next up on utilities is consider act on resolution 23-R3138, awarding contract for sanitary sewer repair with Cure in Place Pipe and associated budget amendment. Council, please realize that this is a budget amendment and will need a supermajority. Mr. Freeber.
In August of this year, the collection system crew was out doing cleaning and found two sanitary sewer pipes that are in very poor condition due to hydrogen sulfide. And basically, hydrogen sulfide was created by, we have a force main, sludge, or the solids stay in the force main. It sits there, starts to work, and then it creates the hydrogen sulfide gas. The hydrogen sulfide gas then takes and turns into hydrochloric acid, which breaks down the concrete pipe. I'm in here asking to get this repaired because the pipe is in very poor condition and we don't have to worry about it failing. I will be coming back in the spring to ask for another budget amendment to fix the manhole immediately as soon as they have availability. Price we have is from Vicious Sewer for, $56,700. I'm asking that we do that work immediately, and then also a 10% contingency for a total of $62,370.
Questions, comments from Mr. Freeber? I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any further questions, comments? Call roll, please.
Alderman Altman-Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
Alderman Maroney.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Next up on old business, consider act on approving the commercial quadricycle license for Vino et cetera, effective September 5th, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. Captain Tim.
Thank you, Mayor. When we last spoke over a month ago, we informed Brian Borkowski of the Pedal Tavern of the PD's expectations before giving a recommendation on the Pedal Tavern's license renewal. We kind of focused on 3 points for Brian. One was follow the specific route, which he is fully aware of. 2, fix the public parking problem, which he has. He has now got private parking, so no longer in a Fowler Lake lot, and some of the noise level on the Pedal Tavern, which is a cowbell, which he's removed as well. Before you is a memo from Chief Pfister dated August 28th about his recommendation to grant the renewal license from September 5th, today's date, to June 30th of 2024. This past weekend, I received a picture of the Pedal Tavern not following the specific route that we had addressed. We were able to confirm that the picture was taken August 18th at 6:58 p.m. I told Brian about that. I asked him to be here to kind of explain why the Pedal Tavern was northbound on South Main Street approaching the Four Corners, which is not the specific route. He's not here right now to answer those questions, but I am here if you have any questions, concerns. That was the only complaint that we have gotten in the last month of the Pedal Tavern and not following the direct route from there. And that was taken, the picture was taken from North 48, kind of kitty corner to northbound into South Main Street at East Wisconsin.
Alderman Altman-Cloth.
What was the date of that last meeting we talked about this? It was like end of June, correct? Was it right before 4th of July weekend?
I believe, I thought we were in July.
Or were we already in July? Well, I guess
I'm
it
not
doesn't really
mistaken.
matter.
I know it was well over a month ago.
So, I'm debating if I want to ask you or just say it out loud, but the weekend after that last council meeting, that we had Brian here explaining to him what the expectations were, and that Pedal Tavern had to be parked behind Vino, I think it was that, or not Vino, Wingers, that first, I think it was the Saturday after that last council meeting, a couple owners of businesses back on the boardwalk had texted me pictures of the Pedal Tavern parked on a Saturday morning behind those businesses, when he was told, 4 days prior, not to do it. So, I mean, that was, and I know he's been good since then, but that was pretty bold, I guess, to kind of put it nicely, that
Sure.
He came here, he promised us he wasn't gonna do it 4 days later. And I don't want to throw you under the bus, but like, I know you were, that was reported to you guys ultimately, and that's not in the report, but you are letting us know about him going off course.
Yes.
So that's 2 incidences that we know of since the last council meeting.
Alderman Mulder.
This is for Diane. I recall there was a reason, because at one point I wanted to make this an annual license, and there was a reason that it had to start in June. Is that correct, or am I making that up?
No, all of our licenses expire June 30th and renew July 1st each year.
This is part
And,
of that. So.
right, they came to us, I believe, the very first time was like in February or March originally to get the license, but we've put them on the cycle with all other licenses for renewal.
Yeah, we tied this license to a liquor license schedule because that's a state statute, which makes a lot of sense, they're gonna be drinking on these things. So that's why you, the common council, decided to put it on that schedule.
Thank you. That's what I remembered.
Has the applicant, or has he contacted you, Captain, or anything? Did he have a family emergency?
He has not. I spoke to him Sunday, advised him of the agenda to be here, and I do not see him.
I want to be fair to the situation.
Correct.
so. Alderman Mulder?
I mean, I'll be honest and transparent. I took the photo, and it was, you know, it was the typical screaming, people almost falling off the, you know, that's what caught my attention. And I mean, I've never been in favor of this. I think I've voted for it both times and have a reason not to, because it's more like personal. And we have two pieces of evidence that they're not following it. Are there any other businesses we allow to just continually flaunt? Or do we not, or should we just remove all rules? I mean, I guess that's the question. Either have the rules and enforce them, or don't have the rules, then don't worry about it. I would be, somebody's.
I'm sorry, I'm talking to the mayor. He asked me a question.
You know, so I know people love it. I don't want to do something that hurts a local business. It's really disappointing to me. I honestly don't want to have him cancel the rest of the rides and start calling our citizens and telling them they can't have the fun they want to have. But I also don't feel it warrants having this extended all the way through next year. So my recommendation, or what I would like to see, is we grant him another temporary conditional permit that goes through the end of his season, whatever that is, November 1st. And if there's any more violations, that's it. Then he can come back, but I'm not going to vote for it again. And then he can come back in January if he still thinks it's a business model and he thinks he can finally actually adhere to the rules we've put out there, then we can vote on it then. That's what I think we should do.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Okay, yeah, so I agree with what Alderman Mulder's saying. I was going to suggest, since he's not here, that we would postpone this vote, you know, till our next meeting, but that would mean that within those 2 weeks, he has no license, and, is that correct? Oh.
Yeah.
No,
Well, I just thought if he could be here, we have questions, you know.
But
we-
Captain
we have
reached out to him.
concerns.
He knew what time. Captain was texting him earlier, where are you? He's choosing not to
There
show
aren't
up.
any, the questions are, why do you violate it? And because he doesn't care. There's only one reason you do it, is because you
Yeah.
don't care.
Yeah, okay, then I agree with your initial comment.
The hard thing is if you have somebody that can respond to it, that helps a great deal.
Yeah.
We want to be fair to say, are you having an emergency? Do you have, that's why I asked you the question
Yeah.
earlier, so.
Can I put things in?
Let's put some things into perspective.
So, where we're at right now, and I looked at it when I learned about this morning, is you granted this license conditioned upon, you know, him complying with the ordinance through today. And you have the right to either revoke it right now or not continue it, or continue it with conditions. But the way the ordinance reads is that if you do not grant it, or even if you continue it tonight, chief of police has a right to revoke it at any time. And then the appeal is to you. So, yeah. So you should know that in terms of your deliberations tonight. You have a chief of police recommending not, allowing it to go forward to next year, June 30th, at which time you can either, he has to apply again, and then you can approve it or not. If you want to follow Alderman Mulder's recommendation, you can extend it to a date certain and say that it is not valid after that date until next year. But I just wanted to give you the perspective under your ordinance in terms of your options. That's all I wanted to do.
Alderman Rozak?
Matt, I like your suggestion. I'm actually very disappointed that Brian is not here. I'm disappointed in the violation of the rules. I think personally at this point, the Pedal Tavern probably doesn't really fit with Economwalk. It just doesn't seem like it kind of matches up with what we're trying to do at the city. It doesn't seem very family-friendly every time we see it. It seems like it clogs up traffic. All the problems we kind of thought could happen when we first granted this 2 years ago are kind of happening. They're going off the route, they're being loud, it's not family-friendly, they're parking in spots they shouldn't be parking in, they're going the wrong way up the road. I mean, all the problems we expected to happen kind of have happened, and we gave them a shot. I would be okay with revoking it. I'm also okay with us saying he has till September or October or whatever, and if there's another violation, we can just tell the chief that he is allowed to revoke it.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
So if we went with till the end of November, whatever, and he comes back to apply again, would that have to be effective then July 1st again? If we're keeping with the
No.
alcohol licenses? No?
Yes, the answer is, if you say his permit runs through
November. or whatever.
November
Yeah.
30th or whatever you say,
Yeah.
and it is done after that,
Right.
his next opportunity is come to you, make an application for June 30th,
June 30th, July 1st. Okay.
July 1st.
So, I don't know, I'm kind of leaning towards revoking this. I mean, if we as parents told our kids, you have to follow these certain conditions if you want to go to the prom or whatever it is, and they didn't, I don't care if they bought their dress already and they had their date, they wouldn't be going to the prom. I mean, I feel like we've just given him so many opportunities here.
Other comments? Would someone like to make a motion? Oh, wait, one moment.
I just want to make one comment. I know what Attorney Riffle has said. I do know his typical year starts like for St. Patty's Day in March.
Correct.
So I know he would be wanting to have the license to start then. And then, as we've said, it ends on June, so then he gets it reinstated from July 1st through June. But I just want to make sure you understand, he would probably want to ask council or at least go to chief and say, I would like to have it for St. Patty's Day, like next year. So I know what, Attorney Riffle is saying, but that might be something he could end up approaching council on. I just thought I'd mention that.
Alderman Mulder?
Yeah, this is going back to what Jennifer said. I mean, I turned in my evidence late after this, if that's what you want to call it, I guess. But it does say we had no complaints, but what you're saying is that you or someone did submit a complaint. Why is this, why is this document wrong? Even if I hadn't taken that picture, should be in the exact same situation. In fact, if I'd known that, we might have revoked it back then if that had been. So I don't, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, this
you receive
document
that.
unfortunately is incorrect because there was a violation after the last council meeting.
Right, and I guess
That's not
my
your picture.
my
That's-
concern is that we weren't even given factual,
We weren't.
that this isn't factual if indeed the police knew about that at the time, which
It might have just fallen through the cracks, too.
I know.
True.
But I mean, so how much, what else happened that
What else happened?
we don't know? I mean,
Yeah.
Alderman Douglas, hi.
I'll speak today, I guess. I just have a question. So currently, as of midnight tonight, he no longer has a license. So if we don't, there's not really actually revoking it, we just take no action on it, right? Am I correct on that?
You're right.
True.
I think, you're right, I think it probably is, we should close the book on it. If we're not going to, we should have motion to not renew.
Are you
I
making
think
that
you always
motion?
need to be fair with people and tell them how you feel if you're going to vote. But that approach will work, if that's what the goal of the council is.
Well, here's the thing, is if we don't take action, it's revoked as of midnight, like Chris said, he can come back and reapply.
Yeah.
And he can explain why he wasn't here, why he had all these violations, and why we should grant him another license for another period of time. I mean, at this point, the onus should be on him. He had a chance to be here to tell us what went wrong, what didn't go wrong, why there were route violations, why there were parking violations after years of doing this. I mean, this is a second year of doing this. He can come back and reapply.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Well, and I like Brian personally, and he's done a lot of great things for the city. But at what point does something happen, like a safety issue, and then people come back on us and say, okay, you guys kind of knew about this and you still renewed the license? I think that would be a concern I would have as well.
I'd like to entertain a motion or hear no motion. With no motion being made, we'll move on to our next item.
You
And,
may want to direct the clerk to notify.
yeah, what we need to do is notify that his license then is suspended or revoked. What's the right term?
Not
I would
longer.
say the renewal was conditioned upon him coming back tonight, and he did not come back tonight, and it's not renewed.
And so, Captain, you'll let him know as well?
You can share that with me.
And then we'll do it formally and with the right language. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Let's move on to our next item. Next item is introduction of Resolution 23-R3119 to vacate a portion of Cary Court. Mr. Gallo.
It's a great resolution.
You drafted it yourself.
I did. So
You look so proud.
Cary Court is a public street in the city. It serves the Lachlan Apartments. It's out in Olympia Fields. We recently, created it. We dedicated it to the city. And it was built. It's an L-shaped street. It's got a north-south and an east-west. And it was always intended to be a temporary east-west connection. And now the time has come that we'd like to vacate the east-west, and it's going to be continued north-south, south more when Pabst Road is extended. Pabst Road is the one by the roundabout, you all know it, over by Sendex, you come in, and that road's going to be extended, and then Cary Court will come down. And that will free up some land that Wangard, who is here tonight, a representative, Mark Lake.
Who's been very patient.
They are in the midst of purchasing both sides of Cary Court from Newman, and they will then build 2 additional, I wrote it down in my things, 23 unit buildings, so a total of 43 more units. And then it'll connect into Pabst Road at a 90-degree angle, which we all like to see. So what this is tonight is there's a state statute talks about vacation of roadways, not taking a trip, but getting rid of the dedication. It has to go to you guys first for an introduction. And that's what we're doing tonight. We're introducing it. There's no action. And then 40 days later, 40 days, a minimum of 40 days, it has to be a public hearing. And we've already set up, I've drafted that public hearing. It's going to be on October 17th. What we're hoping for on October 17th, if all goes well, we're going to have an amendment to the GDP. That's that planned development. We're going to add the 2 buildings in. And the certified survey map that shows the land being added in. There might even be another thing, I'm not sure. There's a whole bunch of stuff. And then that's going to come to you all as a bundle. We're going to bundle everything in a package, and it's going to have the vacation of the right-of-way, the plan development, the PD overlay, the CSM, all that together. So, any questions about that? I'm here, and Mark Lake from Wangard is here, but this is just an introduction of the resolution, and I took the same one that we did recently. I think we did Rockwell Street, and I use that as an example.
Questions, comments? Well, thank you very much, Mr. Gallo, and thank you for coming. Sorry that you had to wait so long.
Well, you know what, I would have a question then if he's here. Are these new units, are these 2 additional units, or are these contemplated by the original plan? It was part of it. I remember those 2 last ones. Okay.
But aren't they a little bit smaller than your originals?
Okay.
Yeah, this east-west was a temporary thing. We always knew it was temporary. They were going to extend it down and put 2 more buildings.
Gotcha, okay. I just wanted to make sure that that was like, when you said additional buildings, I'm thinking we're adding more apartments than what we approved, and we're not. Where it's the same amount we've approved.
The number for that PD only reflected 177 units.
But we knew that there was a
We're
possibility.
going to have to add more units, the PD. But it was, like Mark said, it was conceptual, it was dashed in down there.
There was some.
It's also a condition of our approval of the Newman thing that they're going to spin
that
those
off.
Right.
lands off, so we got a cohesive situation
Yeah.
and the through fare for Pabst Road.
Right, okay.
Well, thank you both. Are you guys good to move on?
Good.
Are you gonna approve the resolution?
No, it's just an introduction. Next item, consider act on ordinance 23-01052 to repeal section 9.23 of the City of Oconomowoc Municipal Code regarding fair housing. This, Councilman, is the first reading. Attorney Riffle, if you'd like to lead us off.
Okay, so, back in 1969, there was a law related to fair housing that dealt with a lot of different issues. Your ordinance is still in place from that point in time, 68, 69. Since that point in time, there's been tremendous changes to the state law related to fair housing. Your ordinance does not reflect any of the changes as it relates to the current statutory treatment of dealing with open housing, which is called now, such things as discriminatory actions for who is going to be in the housing and that sort of thing. There are some provisions that I think Alderman Shellpepper heard from a constituent that pointed out, hey, you know, this doesn't look good. And frankly, it's not consistent with the current statutory situation. Also, personally, that ordinance has me being the judge and jury related to whether or not there are any violations. Whereas now, there's an administrative process for that. So my discussion with the administrator was that we will just get rid of it because there is a comprehensive statutory procedure for dealing with that. Today it was brought to my attention that perhaps there are some federal guidelines that say if you don't have some provision in place, that you may not be eligible for certain grants or certain federal funding. So I didn't know anything about that until today. My recommendation is you go ahead and pass the proposed ordinance on a first reading tonight, and then 2 weeks from now, we will ferret out whether or not there are any implications with regard to potential federal funding that we need to take into consideration. If we find out that that is the case, we'll simply create an ordinance that adopts by reference the state statute.
Question for you, do you think we should do that regardless?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I don't see
not
any,
as
I don't
it's-
see any reason
Not as
to,
it's related to a grant,
No.
but the fact that there should be a tie.
no, I mean, the state statute is applicable in the city, period.
Okay.
But if you have to have something in order to avail yourself of some type of,
Housing grant or something.
yeah, whatever, then we should have it in place. But
That's- glad you
we'll
found that.
work between now and then to figure that out.
Questions for Attorney Riffle? Like to entertain a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments?
Hey,
Alderman Mulder?
I have a comment. I think this is, I heard from a couple constituents on this, and there's, much like our mouse issue, there's the chance for a lot of public comment on this, because it sounds awful that we are repealing something and people will not seek to understand. Is there a way that we can try to get ahead of that and make sure that the newspaper has a really solid article about it, or a factual Facebook posting or something that, someone isn't talking about how we no longer support fair housing in Oconomowoc?
Very good point.
Because
Very
Good point.
that is what will be
Good
read.
point.
Right.
Agreed.
So whatever,
Mark?
whatever you think the best venue is, I think.
Mark, are you going to write this one?
Yeah, Mark is. I'm
Mark,
not.
Mark is writing this one?
Well, I'm gonna reach out to the marketing intern. No, everybody settle down now. I'll work with Attorney Riffle and the city clerk, and we'll put together appropriate wording for a press release to go to the papers.
And I'd like a copy so I can just forward that on to.
That'd be awesome, yeah.
Yeah, if you can,
Good
yeah,
idea.
email us a copy or something, yeah, that'd be
everybody will
great.
get it.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Great.
Yeah, well, and I would just add to that, honestly, what drove this was, like I said, Mark had said, or the attorney had said, a constituent of mine used to live right next to me. He went to some sort of like housing seminar, and Oconomowoc was actually brought up of an example of a discriminatory law that was still on the books. Because if you actually look at the language, we actually had exceptions for discrimination.
And it was
in the-
pulled right
in-
out of the
right,
statute.
right,
at
and
the
it
time,
hadn't
yeah.
been amended since 1968, and so the impetus was behind it was to actually, address that. And then today, Senator Joan Ballweg, a Republican senator in Wisconsin, I saw a new legislation being circulated that would basically nix any sort of covenants that were still on place on the books, that could, basically ran counter to the current state statute, fair housing, because things like this still exist. So this is like also happening at the state level. They're paying attention to what's happening right here. But I think Mulder, brings up a really great point on how we message this. And honestly, what we're doing this is to address, current language that we have on our books that runs contrary to principles I think we all accept in this city. And
No,
so,
thanks for letting us know.
yeah, so I appreciate, that was John Harris that did that. So thanks to John for bringing it to our attention and to the city for, being willing to address it. So that's
We have a
what our
motion
job
and a
is.
second. Any further comments? Call roll, please.
Alderman Altman-Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Alderman Ellis. I apologize.
I'm Alderman Spiegelberg.
I'm
Who
so
am I?
sorry.
Alderman Rozak.
You wish.
Which one?
I don't know why you were, I couldn't see you on my screen. I don't know. Alderman Ellis, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper.
Aye.
Alderman Maroney.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Great.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to a special staff report. Mr. Fry, this is exciting.
Thank you, Your Honor. It was about 2 weeks ago, our city clerk, Diane Coleman, was honored by the Wisconsin Municipal Clerks Association with a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Wow.
And if you want to come up and hold this while I just make a couple real quick comments as to.
Really cool.
Oh, yeah.
That's cool.
So just a couple real quick comments as to that. This award goes to someone that has made significant contributions to the municipal clerk's profession, interacts and mentors new clerks or fellow clerks, promotes the education of the clerk's role in local government, and is recognized by their peers for a job well done consistently over time. And that does describe our city clerk, Diane Conan. So,
I just want to say, this was, see, and I'm doing it again. It's just an award I never thought I would receive from my association, much less be nominated by my peers, and that's how you get the award. So it's very humbling and a little emotional for me because I've seen other clerks get the award, and so deservingly so, and many are. But I do want to say, without the support of the city, mayor, elected officials, I've had the good fortune working here to be able to go to conferences, to be able to run for the association president, and some of the other things, the chair of the committees that I'm on and so forth. And it's because I get the support here and from my team. Chris and Tina, boy, oh boy, let me tell you, they're rocks. And without their support, always their support, I couldn't probably put forth some of the I guess, the work that I do and the things that I try and do. And a lot of it is outside, obviously, of my working hours here at the city, because my city work, my clerking, comes first and foremost. But I do just want to say thank you all, because I feel always very supported by my mayors and my council and my city co-workers, and I've had different administrators, but I feel very supported by Mark as well. And so I do appreciate all of that. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any additional staff reports? No additional staff reports. Any reports or comments from Alderman? Alderman Spiegelberg.
I just wanted to address the comments from Mr. Galbraith, and thank you for being here, about accurate appraisal. And I know, Mayor, that you said you'd be checking into some of the potential comments that were made. When we took on with accurate appraisal, I was on the committee with Lori Sullivan to look at the RFPs and to interview, and there were only 2 companies that responded to our RFP. One was the prior appraisal company that we had. We weren't comfortable with how they interviewed. Their technology was extremely outdated. We were very impressed with accurate appraisal, and obviously they made big promises that many have not been kept. But the bigger concern, I think, at that time was that we only had 2 companies that responded to our RFP. If we're going to do something different in 2025 when this contract is up, maybe we need to be proactive and look at potentially approaching other companies or searching out other companies that may want to be aware of our RFP. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Yep, in the queue, great.
Yeah,
Alderman
Chair,
Schulteicher.
thanks for bringing it to our attention. I've brought this up multiple times, the concerns I've been hearing. Now my alarm bells are going off even more. I don't typically admit to a lot of mistakes, but I'll admit to making a mistake to approving annual reassessments. I think that was a bad idea. I think it puts the onus on the little guy to prove they're right every single year, when that's very hard to happen, when the presumption is on the assessment company to be, accurate. And so while I understand it's about sharing the pie better, I think it absolutely puts just average citizens in a disadvantaged position. And, if I'm still on this council, when the contract comes up again, I swear I will never vote again for annual reassessments. Thanks, Mayor.
Oh,
You bet. Oh, we have another one.
well, actually, that part of the process, I think, is best because it keeps everyone even. No,
We should.
No, but I'm just
Yeah, the
making
open meetings
comment,
law.
talking to Mr. Galbraith too, because there are other communities that don't reassess for maybe 7 years, and then all of a sudden, they come back, and it's a whole different ballgame. That's neither here nor there. I just think that in
Yeah, we have to
2025,
close the
we should look-
discussion.
we
Yeah,
should
sorry.
look into somebody else.
Any other comments from Alderman? I just have one comment as a mayor. What I'd like to kind of do at some point in time is really try to define what the expectations are of everybody for committee of the whole meetings. Today was a perfect example of 2 groups that came in that just brought and wanted to present their information. Yet I also know if you're an alderman, you want to know, okay, what's going on, try to be as prepared as possible. We've worked really hard that when people come to committee of the whole, it's not an action item if it's a big project. But I would really like you guys to think about it, because I need help to help our staff. Because if there are certain expectations we're not meeting for the council, we need to know it, because it completely shifts timelines as to when we can put things in different places. And I think at some point, I don't want people to be upset, and we're trying really, really hard to get good information out. This is not towards anybody or anything, but I've kind of felt this way on and off for the last year. And maybe we just have to talk about what's the expectation of a committee of the whole. Because if we know that, maybe we can hit it a little bit better. So thank you very much. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?